Hi.
My name's McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it's time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning, of course, we've got the Monday Talk champion in here with us, Jonathan Small. Good morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
Doing fine, and you, Stan? It's good to be back here again.
I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm doing real good. How was your weekend?
Normal. Nothing spectacular. Nothing boring. I mean, it's a normal weekend. Always got errands and something that comes up that I have to end up doing. And watching the gas go down. I mean, I had a full tank of gas. Thought I was all set, and then a lot of running up and down. So, got to tap it off. But pretty much, man, just the weather was a little nippy. That's all. You know, I like I like when the sun is out. You know,
nice
sunshine,
sunny day.
Sunny day.
Yeah.
But obviously the NFL, you know, my football team won, so psychologically that put me in the right frame of mind. You know, the Eagles looked very impressive how they came back.
Eagles did look good. Yeah, they did look good. They look better than Tom Brady and company.
Yes.
Yeah, take your son to work day part 2.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't watch the game thoroughly. I had the game on. I was watching in and out. I mean, I'm on my phone doing other things, and it looked like it was going to be an interesting game.
It was good.
Good game.
It was a good game.
But, no, Kansas City seemed like they just was the better team last night.
They were the better team, and they won.
They won.
Mm-hmm.
So your team, again, is...
Yeah, I kind of don't have a team.
You don't
I
have
had
a
a team. You know, I was a Patriots fan, but then Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay. So, you know, I'm not a real big. My wife is the football fan, so Sundays is football.
But then she kind of jumped ship from New England.
She's a fan without a team too.
Without a team.
Yeah, fan without a team.
That's kind of odd though. You need to have a team.
Patriots. You know, we like watching execution.
Now, did the Patriots win? I thought they lost yesterday.
They did.
They did. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, they lost.
They lost.
They lost to Green Bay.
Green Bay is looking pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah. There's only one team that's undefeated.
That's the Eagles.
Eagles.
I think it's going to be a big showdown in a couple of weeks with the Eagles and the Cowboys. I mean, if the Cowboys continue playing the way that they're playing, they got a big game next week against the Rams too, though. So that's a big test. And, you know, obviously Dak Prescott could be back next week. But they're saying right now Cooper Rush is doing a good job. So why
bring back Dak?
Why be right Dak? I mean, you're paying him $40 million. That might have something to do with it. But other than that, and he was the starting quarterback, but he really wasn't playing good to me. I mean, that was just one game that they lost to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, pay him his money and let him go home.
Yeah. But the schedule is going to get tougher for Dallas in the next week. It's going to be a big test against the Rams. And then I think we're playing the Eagles the week after. So, yeah, I mean, it's still early, but you want to be playing good football regardless. I mean, from day one.
Yeah. Because, you know, you could have a losing streak near the end.
Exactly.
It's not how you start oftentimes, but how you finish.
How you finish the game. Exactly.
Right. So it's a game of longevity.
Yeah, particularly it's 17 games now. It used to be 16 games. Now it's 17 games. So you have an extra game. And every game can count or add up towards the end of the season when you're getting into tie-breaking rules and who beat this team. So you can't really take any game lightly when you're going through the NFL schedule or the NFL season. But we'll just wait and see how things progress, But the Eagles are the best team, it looks like right now on paper, being undefeated.
Well, I'm sure my dad's happy because he's a huge Eagles fan.
Forgot all about that. That's your territory, Philadelphia area. Yeah. And I guess they're popular down, and I guess they take football.
Yeah, the Eagles are popular in Philly.
In Philly, right.
Yeah.
That's good to know for that part of the country.
Yeah.
And everything. So did you have your pizza this weekend?
We have pizza every weekend. I didn't have pizza, but pizza is in this house every weekend. My daughter.
Harry's, this place you call?
Harry's is closed. They close Harry's. Although this is this is Harry's Bishop's Corner.
Okay.
There were 3 Harry's. There's a Harry's drama and pizza story, but the original Harry's closed. So we go to Harry's Bishop's Corner, and she will eat no other pizza, and that's where we're gonna go. She, as far as she's concerned, doesn't really matter what you all eat. I'm eating pizza. So
we'll talk about this probably later, but I mean, there's a rivalry who makes the best pizza in the country: New York, Chicago, or even New Haven.
Get into pizza wars. All right, well, we'll save that for later. Of course, it is Monday, which means we always have a special guest on Monday, and we travel. We travel and we gain information, learn things. I always call this like a master class in whatever subject we're going to be talking about, because the guest is always an expert. And so Jonathan goes and he finds great interviews to share with us here in the capital city of Connecticut. So, Mr. Small, with that, we give you the floor, my friend.
Okay, good morning to people out there on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. We have a very highly intellectual, educated woman this particular morning on Morning Talk Live who has a tremendous, vast knowledge and experience in civil rights issues, educational issues, topics, experience, history, a very vast knowledge of many different areas of topics and issues and proactiveness. And I'm really feeling honored to have this guest this morning. Our guest on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show is no other than the Dr.Charmaine Mckissick-Melton out of Warren County, North Carolina. Good morning, Dr. McKissick. How are you doing?
I'm good. Specifically, Soul City, North Carolina.
Exactly. There is a Soul City, North Carolina, and that is going to be the main topic of discussion this morning on this show. But before we get into that, could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, that's a lot. I'm recently retired professor from North Carolina Central University, where I help establish a Department of Mass Communication. Did a lot of different things there. The thing I'm most proudest of there is a 16-year internship with Duke University all over their campus. I started with $7 in minimum wage when I left last summer, 21 at $15+ an hour, and they decided to name the fellowship after me now. So instead of NCCU internship, it's the Dr.Charmaine Mckissick-Melton Fellowship. I'm the youngest daughter of the late Floyd B. McKissick Sr., who was a civil rights attorney, national chairman of CORE. We can go on with him for a long time. But being his youngest child and his oldest child, my mother used to say she had, 2 sets of children. So my sister graduated from high school when I graduated from kindergarten. And my brother's closer to me. That oldest sister is deceased now. I was her legal guardian for the last 18 years of her life. She was very much the civil rights activist out there with that crew like Stokely Carmichael, Julian Bond, Cleve Sellers, who was Stokely's roommate, whose son you hear all the time now, Bakari Sellers. That's Cleve Sellers' son. Okay. Went off on a tangent. Anyway, I've lived all over the place, mostly because of my dad, but also because of education. So I went to undergrad at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. My father was the first to sue and integrate to go there. in 1951 after a lawsuit. He and his friend, he had three friends from North Carolina Central, then North Carolina College, where I just left, who were already in law school. So those are among the first at Chapel Hill. I just came from that, celebration. We call it the BAR, Black Alumni Reunion. Raise funds for our kids, give awards, teacher, faculty, and so forth. Okay. And through him, I just lived all over the place because, his mouth runneth. And we moved along. So as the youngest, I kind of went, so I grew up in Durham. My brother and my oldest sister was my two older sisters were the first to desegregate Durham, North Carolina public schools very early on, with all those others, right after Ernest Green in 1954. They entered in 1955. And so my oldest sister was the first to graduate from the previously all-white high school in 1960. And then my other sister was in the junior high. And then a few years later, because that's the way they just did it around the country, it wasn't anything special, usually graduate school and then undergrad and then high school and junior high. So anyway, eventually my brother and I were allowed to integrate and to be among the first. There is a big difference between desegregation and integration. Because see, in Durham, as an example, and this is true many, many places in the country, desegregation is just 3, 4, 5, 10 of us, okay, amongst all the other white folk. And disintegration is when it all comes together. So my sisters and I, all together, my brother and I was 1963, literally a few weeks after the March on Washington. So my father influenced me to a great deal because of where I was going. So I went to so all of that happened with all of us integrating. My brother was in the 6th grade. So all of us were those kind of guinea pigs, just because we happened to be the right age. Because when you look at my father in relation to other civil rights leaders like Dr. King, he's a little older. So his kids were also older. And he was also part of World War II, which I hadn't gone to my dad, but I'm doing both. And so anyway, I ended up here, as I say in the documentary on Soul City. Yeah, how'd you feel about Soul City? I was going to the High School of Music and Arts, singing, modeling, dancing, acting in New York City. Thought I was going to Juilliard. And my father just created Soul City. So after back and forth 32 times in 1 year with my mother, we decided to move, and we ended up in a mobile home on a dirt road in Warren County, a very, very rural community. So undergrad Carolina, ended up getting my master's in Northern Illinois, also radio, TV, and then I worked in radio and TV in the industry. I was a sales manager for a station that is now a Kathy Hughes station, and also in sales at a Cap City station, which was back then ABC. So I ended up going back to school, somebody called out the blue. I got a call from Bennett College. I went there and established, again, a mass comm department. And then I decided, as a single parent with 2 boys, it was time to go and get a PhD, because that's what's necessary, the academic environment. And I went to the University of Kentucky on a fellowship, Lyman T. Johnson Research Fellowship, where they paid me more probably than anybody else in the country at the time. And I got my PhD there, went back to Bennett for a few years, and then went to Central and was there 16 years. I think that wrapped it up pretty quickly, as much as possible. And threw my dad in there. So, and Soul City.
Right.
So I'll shut up and let you ask another question.
Well, if I'd have known it was going, I knew you had a long background and resume, but I would have just said abbreviate it the best you can, because that was
that was the abbreviated.
That was the abbreviation. Okay, very impressive resume and background, Dr. McKissick. But obviously, the whole topic of this show is about Soul City and the role that your late father, Dr. Floyd McKissick, played in putting that whole city, or that whole development project, combined together. What exactly was the whole purpose and motive behind developing Floyd City, North Carolina?
Well, as you can see in the introduction, my dad was, of course, the first to sue and to desegregate the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. But he'd also been in World War II and been involved in seeing how those countries, mostly France, but Europe in general, how they, had redeveloped and created these communities and sort of been a part of it. And so after CORE, and he organized McKissick Enterprises on 125th Street, New York City, kind of diagonally across the street from the Apollo. The whole concept there was Black economic development. So they did a variety of different things. They looked for the highest income with the lowest sort of level of education needed in New York, and sort of created what that was. Ironically, at the time, remember, we're talking like 1967, 68, it was meat cutting. They also established a publishing company, Thunder and Lightning. And out of these various entities, the federal government created something. And my dad knew a little bit about this, which was basically a new town development. Okay. So there were, I think, a total of 12 across the country. Almost all of them were somewhere close to a major kind of metropolitan area. Like some of the ones way back in the 50s are Columbia, Maryland, and Reston, Virginia, which are Rouse Company people in planning and developing, which also helped plan and develop Soul City. So they were able to get eventually a $14 million guarantee from HUD, which was enabled them to go get the cash to create Soul City. And again, Black economic development. I found something this morning when you mentioned it, and I thought this is a quickie blurb from PR and, of course, on media. So Soul City is an easy 3-hour drive from the Atlantic Ocean, beaches, and also in the Outer Banks, 4 hours west to the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. Carr Lake has 800 miles of shoreline, is only 6 miles from Soul City. It's an hour from the capital. Also, you have State there. You have Duke and Raleigh. I mean, in Durham, you have CCU. We got a bunch of universities here. I won't name them all. And North Carolina has more HBCUs than any other state. And it's right within 2 miles of Interstate 85, and the Seaboard Coastline Railroad ran through the property. So those are some of the kind of factors brought in to want to encourage people to come, because there's certainly been just great migration of folk out of the South going north, not really to, in that point in time, again, we're talking the late 60s, to find what, and again, I lived in New York, I can understand. I mean, you're in a big high rise, you're used to the land. I mean, it's just a different phenomenon. So this was an alternative to people leaving where they were in rural communities to help develop Soul City. And it was very planned out and laid out, villages, and each village would have, its own little community area, as well as an art stuff, as well as elementary school. So, that's the essence of it. It was supposed to be 50,000 people in a period of 20 to 30 years.
Well, excuse me, Dr. McKissick, obviously when you say Soul City, did Soul City actually technically exist, or was this something like a piece of land that was looked at towards developing into a city?
No, actually, it was named on the post office. So I say that's pretty official. Okay. They have now taken it off. I mean, there were signs on the highway. Yeah. It's amazing how many people don't know about Soul City, and I understand. But at the time, and I just realized I was a teenager when I moved there, and I just retired. So there's certainly been a lot in between. But it was, it was national coverage when there was a groundbreaking. The governor came with the helicopter. The NC North Carolina A&T band was there, marching up the road. Multi-million-dollar development. Even now, there's I think it's about a 60,000, maybe 73,000 square foot development where you were like incubator facilities for small industries to come. And one of the major, if anybody reads the book, I'm not promoting it. This is my dad's book, 3/5 of a Man. You can imagine what that relates to. In case anybody doesn't know, 3/5 is when they were putting together the Constitution and how many's going to senators and congressmen. They were asking, how do we count all these slaves down south? And they decided to count us as 3/5 of a man. Okay. Just got to bring it up because it's irrelevant. Okay. So the Soul City book, who I did not write, Thomas Healy, a law professor at Seton Hall, who I worked with. I also worked with the young ladies who did the documentary, which is just recent. My brother and I kind of held onto the story for 20 some years, and we decided that I helped us decide that if people are going to do it, let us be involved. So at least our perspective is heard. So the bottom line is, why did it not become what it was proposed to be? I still say it was success, and I'll say why now. Number one, it created the Carr Lake Regional Water System, which was for Vance, Granville, and Warren counties. So you don't even have to know physically. Just know it's more than 60 miles to the border of Virginia from Durham in the metropolitan area. Nothing in those areas would exist without the regional water system. No Popeyes, no Ruby Tuesdays, no Revlon plants, no any of that industry. Oh, by the way, everybody knows like Bernie Madoff. Okay, Butner. All of that institutional, all of those are related to having water. So I say the greatest impact and legacy of Soul City is that regional water system, better than most regional communities. I mean, now we're talking about Jacksonville, Mississippi.
Well, obviously, when you say
Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, Dr. McKissick. Obviously, when you're saying the water system, the water and sewage systems, it was non-existent up into the late 60s in that part of Warren County, North Carolina. So here in America, you had parts of a country that had basically no water and sewage industry that had existed where people had to function.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember driving here the first time, and my father turns to the house, and I said, well, is that an outhouse? He's like, yeah. Okay, now I've moved from Durham, North Carolina with sidewalks integrated there, and I came here in high school, and they walked down the street to get the water.
Right.
Oh, okay. I ain't know that. Okay. So, and that's also why rural communities have issues if they don't have that infrastructure. To this day, in Warren County, the county has designated land up the street from my house in Soul City as the regional area for development. Why? We have the infrastructure. Right now, houses are developed behind my house. Not exactly happy, but I do see some industries and people buying areas, properties. People who had the original subdivision still exist, but many of them are much older and retired. Okay. And some places not with us anymore. So some of those are rental properties. So this will be new properties. Let me just say this. It's a really cheap house. So I think it's about $1,800. I think it's 2-car garage. Pretty close, but a little bit of land. It's now going for $265,000 in Soul City. That's kind of unusual. Let's just be clear.
Well, obviously,
somebody else bought some property. This is recent. There really hadn't been anything going here for an extended period of time. And I'm quite frankly distressed that the two major facilities, which were the regional facility for, Health Co., where people could come get probated facilities, that's been non-existent for many years. People have bought those buildings and tried to reestablish because those were the biggest kind of, so some places and things here are coming back. And I think it's generic because if you leave Raleigh and Durham, which are all booming, let's be clear, we got Google, we got Apple, we got everybody. We got some Vietnamese down the road in, I think, Chatham County, building an electric car. I think Greensboro, people are building an airplane, New Speed. That's the one that's going to, I think that's London. The area is booming.
Yes.
So when you leave those communities, you coming from a New York, a LA, a DC, a Chicago, and you coming here, and you getting an acre for land, for $120,000, you could throw the rest of your money there. That's an incentive. And that concept was really kind of in place for Soul City then.
Right.
But when you have a Senator Jesse Helms, who basically slides into the demise of Soul City, let's be clear. My father wrote him the initial time to tell him, congratulations on your win. And he wrote back, well, thanks so much, Floyd. But I'm going to do everything I can for the demise of Soul City.
Right.
And he did.
Right. But actually, before we even get into the role that Jesse Helms played,
I think that's all I really want to say about the man.
Oh, okay.
I'll just say that, he slid it in on Friday afternoon. Many people didn't even know what he's voting for. And I've said this before. This is all I really need to say after that, is that, they say the good die young. And he lived a long, long time.
Well, the thing about Soul City is the project really didn't fulfill exactly what it was entitled to do, but there was some good things that came out of the project, particularly with the water and sewage component. But this seems like to me, your father, Dr. Was he a doctor when I say Dr. Floyd McKissick?
He was an attorney by profession, and he was a judge when he passed. So honorable. Some people call doctor because they do have the degrees.
Okay.
But Floyd McKissick.
Okay, so he kind of was networking with people like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael. I mean, it was no big deal for you to entertain and interact with people on that level. So it seems like to me he had some common similarities in some areas. I mean, when you're talking about ownership and developing land for yourself, and obviously this is not, it might
not
get
for yourself. Let's be clear now.
Yeah. Well, when I say self, I mean a group of people. I know I said self individually, but I'm talking about, let's say, for a group of people, and it wasn't just corporation. Yes.
To develop a city.
A city, exactly. So I'm sensing some similarities of Stokely Carmichael, some similarities of Dr. Martin Luther King, and maybe some uniqueness of Floyd McKissick, your father, to build and develop a city, to have the things in the city that you need to function. And very important when you're talking about the water and sewage industry, because you really can't do anything towards a community unless you have water and sewage. So it was like a short-term plan. The only thing I might have some issues with that might have been somewhat of a slight mistake was probably naming it Soul City to give the impression that this is just about for black people, because it was really for I guess more than just one race of people. Go ahead.
Okay. My father has expressed this on numerous occasions since almost day one, that yes, it is about black economic development, but everybody is welcome. In fact, the first two people to move here, one was white. I mean,
right.
Bottom line is people took it and ran with it in a different direction. He has always said it was about agape love from the Bible. And he eventually went on to earn a master's in divinity. And, someone the Institute Shaw University also gave him a PhD when he had lung cancer near the end. And so the perspective of Soul City has always been open to everyone. It's that now black people have a special place where you can go and feel comfortable and be able to earn a wage, live in a decent area, and not deal at the time now. Big cities, this is the late 60s. I understand you're much younger, but in the late 60s, it's nothing but big cities, slums, dirt, public transportation. It was people trying to find a place to go. This is an alternative. It's not the only solution to black economic development. And in terms of the civil rights leaders at the time, I don't have it here, but there's a major Newsweek cover, which has Stokely Carmichael, it has Floyd McKissick, it has Dr. King from SCLC, it has Whitney Young from the Urban League, and it has Roy Wilkins from the NAACP. And it says, which way for the Negro now?
Right.
Okay, and my point is this. Many of those people did not come from an economic perspective. Many of the civil rights leaders came originally as pastors. My father came from a legal background. He's a constitutional attorney. And I think that's why his alternative was the opening that was developed by HUD to create these kinds of communities.
Well, I guess unlike, let's say, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, was the role that, let's say, the government played with former President Richard Nixon, because he was kind of instrumental in implementing some of the funds to go towards this particular project, where what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X was advocating, I don't think there was really no federal funds. I mean, the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. up until his death was working on a Poor People's March or movement. Poor
People's Campaign. So let's put the dates in context.
Okay.
Malcolm X died as I'm moving to New York City. Okay.
65.
Dr. King dies when I'm in New York City.
Right.
Soul City is after that to a great extent by years. So the comparison is valid. But let's just put the context and frame. It's not, this is also going on at the same time.
Okay.
This is many years later.
Right.
This is 69 and into the 70s. So Soul City basically existed from 69 to when the money was officially cut off in 1979.
Yes.
Through Jesse Helms. So, yes, my father became a Republican. Yes, he was a believer in the two-party system. Yes, there was a moment in Warren County, North Carolina, where I live right now, where because I became a Republican, we had a Republican governor who was also supportive of Soul City. He recently passed, Holshouser. At any rate, there was a belief in having power. So how did we do this? My mother was vice chairman of the Republican Party in Warren County. My brother was vice chairman of the Democratic Party in Warren County. I was judge and became registrar of the precinct. So we were no longer dealing with, let me be careful in my language, with majority people of color who were in control.
All right.
Excuse me, majority people of non-color who were in control. And that's part of this whole conversation, really. Okay. Because I came to Warren County in late 60s. First of all, I didn't move here. I graduated from high school here. I'm the only one. I'm the youngest kid. Yes. Graduated from high school right here in 1973. Okay. So Soul City existed a great deal beyond that point to 79. So a few more years. But my point in making all that is that with the varying concepts you were mentioning didn't all flow at the exact same time. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. And I'm glad you was able to.
And one more thing, because there's a friend of mine who I won't mention the name because she's still working on her book, but she's talking about my question asked when I went to the SNCC reunion and nobody wanted to answer it. Half of those people are no longer with us, but at any rate, we won't call names. I can't.
Right.
Bottom line is, it makes sense that everybody has their own perspective. We don't need to compare in that regard. And the money is what she's going to discuss, because each group got their money from different ways. Let's be clear: the NAACP, it was a bunch of white folk.
Yes.
Okay. And CORE was both, but a bunch of white folk. Okay. So who is controlling conversation? I say this right now. Where'd you hear that? Okay. It depends on whom you have heard. Like right now, who needs to write my father's book, a biography? Me. I need to tell the story. We need to tell our stories.
Right.
Because it's a different perspective when somebody else says, as an example, again, I won't mention names, but a history professor in my same institution writes about how easy it was for integration in Durham, North Carolina. You know I'm across campus that we've discussed this. Yeah, you be the third grader. But nobody in that building want to see you.
Yes.
Okay, tell me how easy integration was. Tell me how they knocked my sister down the steps, leave her to die. When the only other black people in the building, her and Larry Skurlock, were cafeteria workers and the janitorial staff. And thank God somebody found it. A church.
Yeah.
So, you need to put, you have to put things in context. I also just left the bar, Black Alumni Reunion at Chapel Hill, and heard a whole bunch of news stories from what they call the Black Pioneers. People like Mel Watt, who was former congressman and had also a position, with the Democratic in at the White House. How they were among the first and the only, a little after my father.
Right.
So those things, believe me, like right now even, you see how dramatic and emphatic and dogmatic I can be about the topic, because it's as I said to somebody when they gave me a tissue at the International Civil Rights Museum. No, that's not the name of that one. The one in Atlanta. She said, a lot of people feel that way. I said, for me, this is memory. This ain't nothing new. This is reliving. Okay. Banging on the counter. Calling you the word.
All right. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm glad you clarified the time span towards what happened with Soul City, because you're right. The Malcolm X situation up into his death in 1965, and then Martin Luther King Jr. up into his death in 1968. This project and this whole plan came afterwards. So you're right. I'm comparing.
But they were all friends. Don't get me wrong. Everybody basically, those people have been to my house. Okay. So everybody just had a slightly different perspective, let's say, on how things should be handled. Like, let's be clear. You can look back at video of Eyes on the Prize and see that moment when Stokely, my father, and Dr. King on top of a bus top of a U-Haul, and tear gas is getting ready to come. And Stokely calls out, "What do we need? What kind of power? Black power."
Right.
Let's be clear. Dr. King exactly won't happy with that kind of perspective. Okay. Everybody had a different way to handle things. For a great deal of period of time, I think most people got along. Certainly till they passed. And I met Stokely again many years. I've seen him through the years till he passed. Just like Cleve Sellers. Saw him a couple of years ago.
Yes.
At the University of South Carolina. I mean, everybody moved on and did different things in different ways. Cleve is doing it from the academic perspective. He's writing about it and living. He's a professor in that area, the civil rights and, all the cases. And, again, he was Stokely's roommate at Howard when they set out to do some of these crazier things. I think probably I'm telling stories that most people never heard before. But I'm kind of the youngest person that kind of remembers this now. Many other people have passed on.
Right.
And which is also why I feel an obligation. Now, people ask, why you retire? And somebody told me when I left the hotel to go to my retirement party, "Oh, you don't look like you retired." I'm like, "Well, thank you, baby. I appreciate that." Yeah. But the reality is, I ain't getting no younger. And I was amongst the youngest to go through this. Okay. And remember, most people my age don't. Okay.
Right.
So I got to write my father's book so I can tell his perspective. And thank you, Lord. He wrote a couple of chapters. He laid out summaries of his chapters. And I continue to find first source documents of things that are his. So it's going to take me a moment because it's all hard copy. Ain't nothing electronic. So it'll be a moment, but I'm thankful that he laid it out that way. I just have to add, basically, as I've already said, one chapter, it's called Beyond Soul City, where I talk to him about him being a judge near the end of his life and dying of cancer right here in this house.
All right. Well, Dr. McKissick, I understand you're very passionate and you have a lot of intensity related towards your father in this topic. I do want to bring Stan into this conversation as well if you have a question, but I do want to address something. It's almost like what she was saying, Stan, about the different perspective, let's say that Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., they kind of, to some degree, was not saying they was pitted against each other, but they had two different philosophies towards working towards a common goal. I don't think Malcolm X was so much in favor of just integrating and just dealing with civil rights issues. I think he had a different level of actionary methods that he was looking to go towards. And I think Dr. Martin Luther King was more of, let's say, the civil rights leader, non-violence approach, not so much of a radical like Malcolm X. And then it's almost like tracing back to the W.E.B. Du Bois, if I'm saying it correctly, and Booker T. Washington. They had different philosophies for different goals. Just saying all of that, what do you know anything? I never heard of this whole Soul City, to be honest, up until last week. But do you kind of get an idea where Floyd McKissick was trying to move towards, in your opinion? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the hand has four fingers and a thumb. I think when sometimes when we when people have conversations around this, when it comes to black folk, there's all these little buckets people want to put us in. When it's a conversation around white folks, you never hear about the buckets. Right. So it's everybody's in the room. Everybody has different perspectives. It doesn't mean that they're at each other's throat or against one another. They're actually working in concert toward a common goal. And to get there, you need everything.
Right.
You need water. You need sewage.
Right.
You need electricity. Is the electricity trying to outdo the sewer? No. I mean, it's all together. And so everyone has a perspective. It all works together. You need desegregation. You need integration. You need, you need to be able to protect yourself. You can be as peaceful as you want, but when the enemy comes, who's going to repel them? So everyone is necessary. So I don't look at it as one wanted this and somebody else wanted that. And this person wants that. No, we all work together toward the common goal. All those things are necessary.
Well, one thing I remember, Stan, and I'll get back to you very shortly, Dr. McKissick. One time when I was talking about Dr. Claude Anderson's building approach and the ladder that he wanted to work towards, economic, politicalness, media, education, and I think it was the court systems. And I suggested that I think the first step you should start with towards building the ladder was the economic level. And I believe you said you believe the political level is the first level that we needed to be started with. I guess you could say, Stan, neither approach is wrong. It's just that you would recommend for you starting with the political ladder.
Right. You asked me where I would start.
Right.
But that's just me. I'm just one knucklehead in the crowd. So, right. I mean, everyone is working together. It's not a either or. It's all.
Exactly.
So who's going to drive? Who's going to take care of the flight? Who's going to pilot the plane? Who's going to feed the passengers? Make sure they can get off in an emergency. It's not like, one is greater than the other. They all work together. Right. And we have to look at things in the whole. As she mentioned in the beginning, agape, love, an unconditional love for everyone and everything, as opposed to, well, he was this and that person's over there. You can't move forward with a disunified force.
Force, right.
So everyone is working together and everyone has their charge.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well,
in my never to be humble opinion.
Dr. McKissick, we do have a lot of questions. I mean, at least I know I have some more questions I would like to ask you. Kind of want to get it in a time span, if you don't mind, a little bit more.
Can I just jump in for 1 second to talk about something you mentioned?
Go ahead.
I think the year is 1965 when Malcolm X came to Durham, North Carolina to have a quote debate, but they're friends. Integration now or not. You kind of brought that up there. So I just need to say this as an individual. I'd always thought that in our era, there's Dr. King. There were people you looked up from a charismatic position, even white people, the Kennedy. When I met Malcolm as a little girl, it was just one of those moments where I was just like, and you hear so much about him, how, by any means necessary. And in my classes, up until the very last, I read the entire piece. It ain't like he said just politically, educationally, socially. It goes on and says a whole bunch of things by any means necessary, just like the program person here. And so the whole concept, when I met him, honestly, just, oh my gosh, who was this? Just awe, shock. Hello, little sister, how are you? Oh, just one of those moments. Not knowing or anticipating this may be the last time I see him.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of people in the civil rights movement that, when I do introductions, when I give introductions about myself and talk about it, I say it like this so you understand my age. I was born a few weeks before they found Emmett Till in the river. And a few months before Rosa Parks sat down.
Right.
So all those things come together. And I just had to say something about Malcolm, because for me, he was just impactful as an individual. I think my brother would say the same thing. He was riding around with them because the people that agreed to let him speak had kind of come down at the last minute with some scare, because I think it was Dr. King had been in Greensboro and they had a little issue there. So he finally ended up speaking, I believe, at the mosque in Durham. But, it was an all-day venture finding somewhere for him to speak, even though it had been announced. And he was coming, well in advance. But those are the kinds of things that happened way back there in the civil rights movement. And so some people tell me, you need to write a book. Yeah, I will one day. Hopefully I'll live that long. My godmother's 104 years old, just had a building named for her at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, as being the first Black professor back there in 1966. So if I can make it to that point, I know I can finish writing it. But right now, the first book is about my dad. And I didn't mean to go on that long, but I will take a couple of more questions if you have something that you'd like to ask.
Well, again, obviously related to Soul City, because basically the Soul City, from what you indicated, started it in 1969, and it kind of officially ended, at least let's say the funding ended, if I'm correct about this, in 1979. What kind of took place after 1979? Where did Soul City try to move towards, and where did it try to develop towards after somewhat ending in 1979?
I don't think there was much involvement by the Soul City Company, because there is no company. Some people literally had to leave and find a job to pay some bills. There was in 79 at this point one major subdivision that had been created. Some people own houses there. That was not too difficult to get rid of, because this is still, even to this day, some of the best housing in Warren County. I am currently head of the Soul City Parks and Recreation Association, which is basically like a homeowners association here, which owned until about 10 years ago, where I gave it to the county of Warren, to maintain, and then got on that Parks and Recs to keep up that. To this day, the only public pool in Warren County. Tennis courts, I think they finally built some at the other place. So I had to just clarify it just a little bit. Now, let me see if I can get back to the original question. Ask me a shorter version to see if I can get there in your time that's left.
Well, again, I mean, basically, what kind of exists even today in Soul City? I mean, it was initially designed to be, 50,000 plus population-based city.
Yeah.
So what kind of element exists today in Soul City?
What exists today is pretty much what existed then and a little more. There was one major subdivision which had about 10 to 12 streets, and people live there currently. Some lots, a couple of lots are vacant, but not. There's also another senior citizen housing development and a second senior citizen housing development. I'm not sure who's going to own them soon, because that's going through some transition. And the subdivision that's behind my home, which would have been Pleasant Hills, is my understanding beginning to be developed. I did see, like I said earlier, one lot near it with a home on it was going for $250,000. Now in the original Green Duke Village, the original village, is also a 1790 house, which a few years ago, right before COVID, I got a small grant from the National Park Service to helpfully make it to the McKissick Soul City Civil Rights Center, something that people can come and see. But downstairs would, museum-esque. All the stuff, quite frankly, that's in my house that I have not given to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and my father's collection is the largest collection there, would be in this facility, some of his personal things that he would prefer. And making downstairs more of a community kind of facility, because we don't really have that right now. It's slightly in disrepair, but hopefully I can find some funds and through grants get there to get that going. So that's basically what's here now. But let's be clear: any industry that is in Warren County, most of it is near Soul City or on land that was part of Soul City. Down the street is a chicken, not growing, but it processes. Down the road a piece near Soul City, there's like a warehouse for corrugated boxes and things like that. Actually relatively clean, thank God, kinds of industries. But unfortunately, and hear me out, Warren County is a different place because of Soul City. Praise God. It ain't no walking, hopefully in most places, to get some water down the road, okay? Or using an outhouse, okay? That's number one. Certainly not in Soul City. But right now, the largest employer in Warren County is mostly in Soul City. To a certain degree, it makes me sick. You know why? Because it's a prison.
Right.
It's a Warren County prison. Now, granted, It has the most number of jobs in the county. And down the street, they're building it's less than 5 miles from here, building a brand new, huge facility that's got to be in the multi-millions. Okay. More warehouse kind of stuff, but still. That has not happened in this area in a long time.
And again, it wasn't designed from your father, Floyd McKissick, to have, let's say, a prison where it's currently located at in Soul City, or that particular. No. He had a much broader.
To be very clear. First couple of times I've drove down that street, I cried. The facility they have two things, and a piece of land that we were never able to get. That's close to there. We would call it by people's names, the Collins Tract. Never able to get that. They sold the largest chunk to the county to build the prison. Now, down the street, they bought what was Soul Tech 1, the first largest building in Soul City, where my father's office was, where the visitors center was. And it is now a manufacturing facility for janitorial products. I should say products, maybe soap, for the rest of the state of North Carolina types of facilities. But like I said, the first time I drove by, I literally cried. No, that's not what that building was made for. No, that's not what Soul City was designed about.
Exactly.
But down the street, a few feet away, is the Soul City Fire Department. So thank God for that, which my mother and sister were both a part of.
Right. So,
and some of the originals are still here. One person in particular, I have to say, Jane Groom. She moved here with her husband and 5 children, and one with the army babes, the babe in arms.
Yes.
And she's still here and still trying to do various things within the community. So some people have stayed, but like I said, a lot of people, and my father would be 100 years old this year, March the 9th. And so the city of Durham, their museum, history museum, is actually creating an exhibit right now that will be in Durham, probably at the North Carolina Law School, University of North Carolina North Carolina Central University Law School, where he went before he got into Chapel Hill, okay, and at the Hayti Heritage Center, which used to be a church back in the day where a great deal of civil rights movement occurred, but now is a cultural arts center. So, things do come full circle to some degree, but I think Soul City at some point in the near future will kind of become a commuter community to go to Raleigh-Durham, where the biggest jobs are. And like I say, it's big time tech now. And I got SAS and Raleigh. It's an international airport.
Yes. Well, in your approach and your beliefs, what would you like to see, and what do you think needs to be advocated towards developing in Warren County and Soul City? If you had the ability to implement certain things that you would like to see, what are some of the needs and some of the empowerment structures that you would like to currently see exist that doesn't exist in Soul City?
I could dream for a while, but I'll try to be nice here because I tend to be a little radical. If you look up my father's name, usually the most frequent word used for him is that he was militant.
Yes.
And like they say, sometimes fruit don't fall too far from the tree.
Yes.
But, I'm not here to recreate Soul City. I'm on a different agenda. Okay. Do I want things to progress and be good and have some sort of legacy like he would have liked? Absolutely.
Yes.
But I can't control who's going to come here, buy land, and do what they want to do. Only people that can control that is the county.
Yes.
And that would be the county commissioners. And this may sound cruel, but here goes. It is sad to me that there are some people. I've said that I thought diversity was a great idea in the 70s. Why would I not think it in the 2020s? Well, unfortunately, the county commissioners in Warren County are all African American.
Okay.
And that does not stress me on that level. What stresses me is that I don't see that kind of level of cooperation. Some are friendly to me. Some are friends. But I don't see what I need to see. When I leave Durham and cross over some water and leave there to go to Virginia, which is like an hour and 10, 20 something to drive there, maybe a little more. All the development of every interstate is not in Warren County. But you see it all, Granville County, a prison, not a state prison. You know, like I said, Bernie Madoff, people like that over there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it stresses me that we have not capitalized on what is already here.
Right.
And find a way. And I do believe some of them believe in the concept. But you know what? Everybody got a 9-to-5 job in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
Or their heart's not in it.
Right.
I did a lesson dissertation on a multi-million-dollar program that we did at the University in Kentucky, and then I did it at the University of University of Cincinnati. I did the University of Kentucky, and what it told me after 6 months of looking at everything was they cared. It was a jumpstart Lexington, a qualitative analysis, and bottom line, substance abuse prevention, okay, career intervention, and hopefully not get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And people told me they did what the program asked them to do. They read the books, and even though they got pregnant, they knew that they needed to go back to school, not because of what we taught them, but they saw we cared.
Right.
I can't teach people the point was to take this program and go around the country. I can't teach people to care.
Right.
And that's kind of what I feel about this. So, you just have to go make some money. Mm-hmm. There are people who are coming here right now. They have my number. I've texted them. And have I gotten anything back?
Yeah.
And in some cases, they're African American. And I know you're much younger than me. Mm-hmm. And I just turned 67.
Okay.
But it distresses me to a great deal that you tell me you want to work with me, but you can't text me back. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying. I don't know how to make it work.
Right.
I'm trying.
But you said the key element, you can't make people care. I mean, you could give people the blueprint, you can give people the information, you could give people your expertise, but they have to really care about it and be serious. And that's something that you really can't make someone really care about something that you personally believe in is for the better good of the people, because obviously this whole Soul City was really a very major need, not just a major want, but it was really like a major need. And it could have obviously turned into afterwards having the type of things that you like and want beyond. But first, starting with the water and sewage is a very major, vital, important need that you have to have. And you have to give a lot of credit, if not all of the credit, to your father, Floyd McKissick, for being instrumental in seeing that.
We need to give some credit. Wait, but let me just jump in for one second. We need to give some credit to my mother.
Okay.
Was one of the first elected officials of the Soul City Sanitary District.
Okay.
And honestly, I'll tell you, she didn't want to step up like that, but I'm like, you can do it. You are capable. Go give it a try. It was a time I'll be honest, women were not supposed to be at the top. You might be involved, but they weren't supposed to be at the top. And I told her to go for it. And my father encouraged it. Okay. So she became the first elected official, along with Lou Myers and Jim Groom, to be the 3 commissioners of the Soul City Sanitary District. And their names are now on the plaque on that Carr Lake Regional Water System I'm talking about, which is located in Vance County on Carr Lake.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stan and Dr. McKissick, I'm going to always get back to saying what Dr. Claude Anderson has towards a community is when you own, control, and have a direct stake exactly where you live and function at. And it seems like to me, I'm not exactly sure. There might be a few puzzles missing in the Soul City project. Obviously, having a prison instead of another form of industry is not something that Floyd McKissick was advocating towards. And I think many people today would if you have your choice of having a level of industry, you would not be in favor of a prison system industry comparable to another form of industry. So again, it's very important that people realize how important, as simplistic as it may sound, when you hear having a community that you own, control, and have a direct stake of, it's very relevant towards many levels of your everyday life. And you may see it differently, Stan. I know you have your approach on what a community is designed to be and do, and You said it many times here on this show that you feel even the capital city in Hartford is like a plantation. But what's your take? I mean, do you have any more questions? I just wanted to say that and get that out.
No, it's a great opportunity to learn more about Soul City. You know, there are books. There's a couple of documentaries, things you can watch and get up to speed and learn about. But all too often, our visions are derailed by other individuals who are in power. It's not that we don't have vision. It's just that it's very, very difficult to push uphill. And as our guest has mentioned, the one thing that's really necessary is for people to care. If folk don't care, there's only so much you can do. You can invite people to dinner, but you can't make them eat.
I can't make them eat, right?
And so, it's just the necessity of what you said is obvious. Yeah, all those things are necessary. That's not debatable.
Well, let me just say this one last thing. The Reverend Henry Price told me this a long time ago about when people always say you can lead a horse to the well, but you can't make him drink it. He said if you make someone thirsty enough, they will drink it. So maybe people are just not that hungry. Maybe they feel content that you really don't need to do certain things. I'm not saying that's the only reason behind it, but if you're thirsty, you're gonna want to drink the water. But if you're not thirsty, I think it's very unlikely that you're gonna feel there's a need to do something. So if you're not thirsty or hungry enough,
I can't debate the truth of what you say, Jonathan. But at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding.
Yes.
And so, where are all these thirsty people?
Right. Dr. Charmaine, I know you said you didn't want to say too much about Jesse Helms, but obviously you can't. To me, I don't think it would be fair enough to leave this segment of Soul City, how it kind of ended, without really mentioning the role somewhat that he played involved with ending or not having Soul City being duplicated the way it was designed to do. So do you mind or just giving your brief assessment on the role that Jesse Helms played again? And I guess former, congressman or former representative? Senator
Helms
in North Carolina.
6 years at a time.
Okay.
He used to be a significant owner of something called Capital Broadcasting, which is actually a pretty big company, especially here. They own radio and TV and ball game and Durham Bulls and a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyway, that's now. Back in the day, they owned radio, and then he also had a percentage in the News and Observer. But of course, when you run for office, unlike somebody recently, but when you run for office, you give all that up. That's what happened in the 70s. He divested from all those entities. My personal perspective does not change interpersonal relations. So ironically, I thought, weird, that the News and Observer newspaper, the largest newspaper in the state of North Carolina to this day, for month after month after month, wrote negative articles on the front page about something negative about Soul City. Mismanagement of funds, something, nepotism, you name it. They tried. GAO came, investigated another long period of time, and eventually were cleared of everything. But from a PR perspective, that did not help anything. So people have read the negative. But when you read on page 6, been a little corner article, but after everything else has been on the front page for months, they didn't even see the disclaimer. So I think it certainly, and then you have a senator who says from the moment he walked in the door, we were operating first. He jumped in to be a senator and became a senator. And like I said, I wrote and told him about my dad. The dad said, congratulations, and basically, can we work together kind of thing? And he said, no, I'm going to try to get your demise. And he did. I mean, it took him years. Right. But, there was never any misappropriation of funds at Soul City. Nothing ever was proven. No nepotism. For instance, my brother, he has a degree in planning from the University of North Carolina. He went to Worcester in undergrad and has a geography degree. I think he's capable of being an assistant planner. Not the number one. Stuff like that. That's all. you're trying to go for something that's not there, but trying. And they did. They kept negative on the front page for months. I think I said like 18 months. So, that did not help anything. And the real issue with Soul City, every single year, we're begging for money.
Oh.
Well, how do you move forward when you're begging?
Yeah.
I mean, from the federal government for various programs and things. Okay. So, but but yeah, basically, Jesse at the end of the day caused the demise. And I've met him on a couple occasions. I even handled, this sounds a little sick, but I even handled his advertising at one point when I was working at a little rinky-dink station in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I mean, somebody was going to get that money. Might as well be me.
Right.
I mean, I was in sales.
That's
I was
what
tired
you do
of
when
this
you're in
whole
sales.
gang of people not getting a client. Somebody I done worked forever, never. So I actually set it up. I told him, let's have a meeting. Let's go through who's going. Will you go first? No, I'll be last. Because I knew I was going for him, number one, because he spent more than anybody else at that time, anybody else in the history of the United States. Yes, I want Jesse Helms.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I've met him. Southern gentleman to the clan.
Right.
Hello, Aunt Lady. How are you? It's so good to meet you. You're such a pretty little frock. But underneath all that goodness, as I said to him, I guess since you did my avatar, so knowing you know who my daddy is. I will not be voting for you, but I can do my job.
Yes. Trying to figure out, I know we're wrapping out. I know we're running out of time. I usually like to end the segment on somewhat of a positive, upbeat note. And I don't know if the last commentary I guess it was the truth more than anything. So I guess you have to speak the truth. So it might come across on a negative side about what happened.
I don't think it's negative.
You don't think it's negative? Okay, it's more just the truth.
It's the truth.
The truth.
Unfortunately, some of it's negative.
Right. But I just like to end a segment on somewhat of something to look forward towards, and exactly. Again, I mean, we talked about many different things, even outside of Soul City. Before we wrap this program up, is there anything else that you would like to say? And it might be needed for a part 2 segment because I don't think everything was really clarified, but I think a lot was addressed in Soul City, but there might have been some things that I felt I could still address beyond what we did talk about. But I think you was very elegant and passionate towards making your views and your statements related towards Soul City, related towards your father, Floyd McKissick, and other areas that it currently exists in social justice, civil rights. But with saying all of that, is there anything else that you would like to say before we end this program?
Well, I guess I'd like to leave on a more positive note to say that I am the president of the Soul City Parks and Recreation Association. I'm trying to get it back up and going. It kind of just faded in COVID like everything. It's a nonprofit, I was working a full-time job. I was in Zoom land for years. So I'm trying to get that back up and going, which means there's a covenant to some of the land in Soul City. So hopefully I can get some of those funds to start fixing up that 1790 house, so it can at least be used by the community for the next couple of years as I continue to work towards grants to create the McKissick Soul City Civil Rights Center. But my primary goal is to do my father's biography. I said, little IO, but for me, that's what I'd like to do to help Soul City move forward.
Right.
And I will be willing to work with anybody that would like to work with me.
That sounds uplifting and positive. All combined what you just left off towards your last segments. And again, it was very informative, very interesting listening to what you had to say during this morning's interview segment. And I think certainly as you move forward to whatever, plans or, movements that you're looking to do, even beyond writing the book, which I think would be very helpful and informative as well about, Soul City and your father and many other aspects that Floyd McKissick played, because he sounds like you have to put him right up there in the same, not again comparing people, but when people look at leaders during that period of time, Martin Luther King Jr., Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, even to some degree, other leaders that we haven't even mentioned. I mean, those names always seem to pop up when you get into that era of the 60s and civil rights and social justice issues. And I think Floyd McKissick, you have to put him right up there and, say he had a big vision for Soul City and Warren County, North Carolina, that really should be even looked at and somewhat modeled even today. And I just want to leave it off on that last statements and everything. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. It was a pleasure to meet you. And
you guys too. It was interesting.
Interesting.
I didn't think I was going to get that emotional, but I sometimes get growing, and there you go.
Wow, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a difference. It's different when people read about stuff, learn about stuff, taught about stuff, and lived the stuff.
Lived the stuff. Yeah.
It's a whole nother level.
Amen to that.
She's not talking about what she didn't heard.
Right. Exactly.
Talk about
right. There's some things. Look, there's some things I done seen too that I ain't talking about.
Right.
Okay?
So God.
Hey, I mean, there's stories out there. I'm like, no, I'm not confirming none of that. Yeah, I might tell my closest friend, I saw him do da da da, but
yeah.
I mean, because that was a different era too with men.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
So, but anyway,
well, God bless you.
I'm gonna go and look for my Duke Power Man to come.
All right, God bless you, and thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule.
Would you send me a link to this so I can send it to my friends or just keep a copy?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
We will.
Thanks much.
God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, we'll take a short break, my friends, and we will be right back. It's Morning Talk. A little bit of Greater Hartford Festival of Jazz. Stick and stay.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Greater Hartford Festival of Jazz. I'm sure it'll be smoking this year. This was 2016, Sunday, July the 17th. From the archives. Of course, this whole event is on accesstv.org, as well as about 4,000 other things. But it's morning talk right now with myself and Jonathan Small in the house. Great guest, Jonathan.
Yes, never met her before. Obviously has some extended family in that area of North Carolina, and didn't even realize, like I mentioned on the air about Soul City. Just ran across the idea last week, so I said, let me just look into it and jumped on it. And the Community Development Commission or agency down in North Carolina, they was very quick in responding back to me and putting this whole interview together, which is something I always like. Just give me an answer, yes or no. If you can do something, yes. If you can't, just thinking about it, I'll get back in touch with you, like she mentioned about at least text her. I just don't really buy into that approach.
Well, sometimes people are actually busy, John.
I understand that.
They may not be in a position to just jump right.
Well, the thing about this is I spoke to someone. I mean, I understand if you're busy, you have to still work on your schedule and everything, but I understand. But again, the key element she mentioned that I picked up on is that you have to care about something. I mean, all these other things we're talking about, people should do this or we need to do this and that. If you really don't care about it or you just don't want something bad enough, you're not going to really be dedicated.
That's absolutely true.
Put the initiative, and me, I'm always kind of upfront. If I'm not really interested in something, I'm not going to really get into the African American Alliance. I mean, you give a lot of requests, and I'm not going to be part of something just because I like you or I know you, Stan. I mean, I will support it. Now, don't get me wrong. Y'all have some type of fundraiser or something like that, and you want it to be funded, I would support it, and I wouldn't just do it just because I know you.
Well, that wouldn't be
the right
a good reason to do it.
Exactly.
Right.
But I just remember the whole idea when you, and I guess I don't know if Cynthia Jennings or Kevin Lovejoy, y'all was putting together State of Black
the State of Black Hartford.
Yeah, and I really only got into that because of you. I mean, you kind of talked me into. Yeah,
but you weren't part of the panel.
I wasn't part, but I went to the first.
The first meeting, right,
like the
right,
introduction.
Yeah. And
a
whole lot of people were there. All of the producers were there.
You sure about all of the producers?
Yeah.
Russell was there.
Are you talking about the first meeting before the program got started?
It must have been like the first meeting. It was, I think, in 2000.
It was here.
No, you had
talking about the first show.
No, you had something with the State of Black Hartford.
The State of Black Hartford was a show that we produced. We did several episodes. It was held at Muhammad's Mosque number 14.
Right.
You were there?
I was there. I went to the.
So you went to the first episode.
Episode, yeah.
Right, but you were there in the audience.
I was in the audience. Yes.
You weren't on the panel.
No, actually, I was on the panel.
Oh, you were on the panel?
Because you asked people to give a statement. I remember that part. So I was actually.
You were sitting on the panel with.
I was sitting on it.
Oh, okay.
You kind of convinced me to be part of the whole panel.
All right. Well, then that must have been the only one.
That was the only.
Because I don't remember you from the.
No.
Well, all of the producers at the time were invited to be panelists, and so the people who wound up being panelists were the folks who you saw.
Okay.
I don't think. Cynthia was on there.
Cynthia.
Yeah, they all had first right of refusal. Let's put it that way. They all had first right of refusal, and then the ones that wanted to be involved were, and then I think we had a couple of other invited guests that became panelists, and Lou Brown was the moderator. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, nonetheless, it was a good interview. And
Thank you.
That's the point. It was a good interview.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, King, Malcolm X, and her father. Yeah, right. King was assassinated. Malcolm X was assassinated. and her father's dream
was assassinated.
Exactly. That's the link.
That's the link, yes.
That's the link. And that goes even further. Anytime, you have great ideas that are going to move forward, this is from a historical context, right? It is what it is, not what we want it to be or should be or could be or would be, but what it is. From a historical perspective, it would seem that any major big ideas that are going to propel and move forward black people as a group are short-circuited and ultimately killed. That's just my observation.
But the one thing that really wasn't killed was, again, implementing the water and sewage.
The water and sewage is a necessity to the whole thing. That's where you have to start. It's not that it wasn't killed. It's just that that's a part of.
A part of, right.
It's like saying, they were able to purchase the land. Yeah, King was able to do stuff too. So was Malcolm X.
Right.
So the issue is less what they were able to do and more the fact that the dream was killed. The vision was killed. Because an integral part of that is economic freedom and independence. And in order to have freedom and economic independence from the gains that were made or achieved or acquired during the civil rights movement, is the development of ways to support people of color, black folk.
It's kind of not getting off of the subject, but it's kind of still in some areas maybe getting off of the subject. I sent a couple people some links. I think I even sent you a link about the low black home ownership rate that exists in the country. Comparable to, let's say, the home ownership rate of white people, Asian people, if you want to even break it down to Hispanic people.
You're taking into consideration the population, the numbers of people,
right,
per capita.
It's below 50%. I think it was like 43%. And sometimes people may not, understand or say it's not that important. Owning a home is just something that's nice to have. It's not really a necessity. That's just saying some people may look at it that way. But I think through some personal experiences of not owning something and seeing the outcome, and certainly other people who've been through issues of foreclosures and just whatever circumstance comes along about owning something comparable to rent, I see more benefits than owning something than I do renting something. You own accesstv.org network. You're not renting accesstv.org network. It's something that you and Nyesha owns. So you have a lot of input by owning the network more than, let's say, leasing. I don't think you can even lease a network.
You can lease time on a network.
You can lease time, okay.
Or on a cable system. Yeah.
Okay. But the big scheme is you own the network outright. Just like Tyler Perry owns his own TV studio operation outright, Again, I understand owning things do require certain levels of responsibility, certain levels of resources that sometimes you just may not have for whatever particular reason. But I think the first step would be the importance, let's say, and the information about owning something. Because with the cost today of rent and owning is very expensive, due to other factors. It's much more expensive today
right now. To be sure, we're talking about ownership of house.
House, yes.
Okay.
Of house, and not to say this because it's not a complete accurate statement when you hear, well, if you're paying this amount of money for rent, it's like you're throwing your money down the drain because you're getting something in return.
Right. You're not throwing your. I think ultimately it comes down to what's best for the individual. I've owned homes. I don't now. If circumstances change, it could be that we wind up owning a home again.
Right.
But if you own a home Say you buy a home for $200,000. Round it off. All right. And you're not going to own the home. You mortgaged the home. So you're paying the bank for your home.
Right.
But you don't own it outright. It's different if you take $200,000 and go buy the home.
Cash offer, yes.
Right. Now you own the home.
You own the home, right.
So a lot of this is in the head. Now you can live rent free if you buy your house and then sell it.
Right.
But you could also buy a house and the house deflates in value, and now you owe more on the house than the house is worth. You can't sell the house, and you're trapped in the house.
Right.
So a lot of these things are based on a whole lot of other things. But then also, what is it that you want out of life? There's a cost for living in a house. Or the cost of living. You're either going to pay rent, or you're going to pay mortgage, or you're going to pay cash. So even if you buy the house outright at $200,000, if in 10 years you want to move and you sell a house for $200,000,
right,
that's a great deal. Because for 10 years you live rent free.
Rent free.
You get your money back. You're cool. That would be the best
case scenario.
Case scenario. So there's pluses and there's minuses. All right. But when you own a house, the house owns you.
You mean when you're paying like the mortgage?
No, the house owns you. Okay. You can't leave it unattended. You have to take care of it. You gotta pay. If the roof, if something happens to the roof, if there's a natural calamity like a fire or a hurricane, tornado, there are also liabilities.
Insurance.
And I shouldn't say liabilities. There are also, unforeseen circumstances that could make home ownership a very terrible, a tragic thing. I'm not trying to talk people out of it. I'm just saying you have to determine what's in your best interest.
Right.
Like owning a car versus leasing a car versus renting the car when you need the car.
Right.
So I think all these things are, individual decisions. Now, you can build equity in the house. There's financial tools and financial rationale for owning a house. You sit down with your financial planner or somebody who's astute in finance and figure out what's the best way to do this. If money is what you're after, then you do what's best for that. If lifestyle and living a particular way is best for you, ownership may not be the best thing.
I think if you break it down to what you own too, I understand what you're just saying about lifestyle and issues. If something go wrong with the house, you got condos, you got townhomes.
Oh, I would never own a condo.
Why not?
Ever. Because I don't own the property that the condo's in.
Okay. You just own the built. You just own.
I own a room.
The room. Okay.
But that's me. That's what I'm saying. So it's depending upon the lifestyle.
The lifestyle.
Rather than to pay rent in an apartment, you own the condo.
Right.
But you got to pay condo fees, which could go up or down. They never go down. Which could go up, and you don't have control over. You get a bad condo association. The president of the condo association don't like you, and the other neighbors. There's pitfall. There's pros and cons to everything.
I think.
So you have to do what's best for you, given your long-term plans, your short-term goals, and then you work toward those things, because all of those things could change.
Well, that's why it's a real important decision. Some decisions you just can't jump into just like that. Now, renting an apartment, owning a condo, a townhome, or owning a single-family home, you can probably throw in a trailer home. They're building all small, tiny homes now. So there's many different housing
That's a nice
stocks
term, a tiny home.
that you have. Some people mobile home. I would never own a RV. Some people say you.
I knew a guy. I used to work with at Pratt Whitney when I first started working at Pratt Whitney. I was 19 years old. He was a little bit older. I think he might have been like 21. He bought a mobile home, not a mobile home, like we had wheels. It was like a camper, but of course you could drive it around.
Right.
And he lived in that. He bought it. It was relatively cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And he lived in that thing for 3 years and saved 3 years, basically 3 years of his salary.
Right.
So in like 3 years, he had like 60 grand
Mm-hmm.
in the bank. In 3 years, I had nothing in the bank.
Yeah.
I spent it all recklessly.
Yeah, I've heard you mention that.
You know, it's where's your head? Where are you heading? And what do you want to do? There's a whole lot of what people should do and best advice, this, that, and the third. I think everybody should have a plan and a goal, long-term and short-term. Where do you want to be 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to be a year from now? And how do you get there? And given the best case scenario, without things changing, you head toward that mark. And you make assessments along the way. If things change, you adjust accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be married to the 10-year plan if the 10-year plan is not going to be realized
Right.
along the way. So you have to set some, ways to measure where are we, what's the likelihood of us attaining those goals given where we are now and what we project to be forward. And you make adjustments. But at the end of the day, you live right now. You don't live 10 years from now. You live right now. And so these are decisions people have to make. Do you want to live life in the moment with thought for tomorrow? Or do you want to sacrifice now working toward that 10-year goal?
But see, that's what I always hear people talk about retirement, man. People always say, well, I got to stress myself out, all of this job, just so when I retire, I want to have something, a pension or Social Security or whatever other investment. People got to still realize you have to live for today, but you just constantly hear people in the job market talk about,
That's
huh?
No.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just worrying about retirement. That they don't want to have
some people. They are. They want to. For a lot of people, 65 is the target. They're gonna quit their job. They're gonna live their best life at 65.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they're gonna start living. They're gonna take vacations, chill. They've got a nest egg stored up, and they have their little investments. Hopefully, the market doesn't tank. Take their investments down with them. Hopefully there's no political calamity that takes their property away.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea what's going to go on 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Let alone 30 years from now. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are working their lives for a future that is as guaranteed as tomorrow.
Right.
They have no idea what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't be wise. You have a plan to say, you have a reasonable savings plan that no matter what, it's just money in the bank for the future, at worst case scenario. But these are decisions people make. Do you sacrifice?
Yeah.
Work yourself to the bone?
Yeah.
Two jobs. You don't spend time with your family or friends, and you just work yourself to the bone, and you're working at a place you hate because you only got 3 more years to get your pension or till you retire, and then 10 months after you retire you die.
Yeah. Well, I think if you can learn, everybody is different, man. You learn how to maximize your time. That's not always as simple as it sounds. You could do more in less time. One thing about the job structure is it controls your time element. As I mentioned, my mechanic friend, he likes to have his time balance.
So he has kind of job gives him freedom.
Right. But he's still looking into, let's say, a structural job, to supplement, when things are slow, buying and selling automobiles. But his time is very important because he can't be at 2 places at one time. If he's trying to buy an automobile, he needs to be in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and he's at a job. He can't really be able to sustain the purchase deal, or you have to pay somebody out of his own pocket. So he wants to capitalize on his time.
Time to him is more important, it seems, than he needs the freedom to control his schedule.
The schedule, exactly.
That's all. That's how I would phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, time is the ultimate equalizer. Time is more precious than money.
Right.
How you spend your time is a personal choice. You have to eat, and you need a place to sleep.
Right.
So some of that time's got to be used in earning money to pay rent and buy food. Or you could use your time to grow the food. Or you could use the time to build your house. You go to a place, chop the wood down, build your own house. That way you don't have to pay for a house. You know, you have to pay for it with time. These are all things people can do.
Right.
But they have to they have to decide what's in their best interest, what fits their lifestyle. You know.
Well, again, I think every course of errors that we're in presents more opportunities and more ways to do things than you could have done in the past. Like, you make a comparison, let's say 50 years ago, 1972 to 1922, there were many different things you could do in 1972 that you couldn't do in 1922. Move forward to today, there's many things that you could do in 2022 that you couldn't do in 1972, and we're going to continue to move in that
That's
direction.
always the case.
That's always the case.
That's all, and they'll be able to do more in 2042 than we can do now in 2022.
Right.
And that's the evolution of things.
But how do you make it benefit you? I think is the
you
real
take
key.
advantage of the opportunities that sit in front of you.
Right.
That's all.
Mm-hmm.
There's no book that you pull off the shelf how to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be presented to you in 2022. If you don't have a vision and know what you want, then it doesn't matter what's there.
Mm-hmm.
What does an individual want? What do you want out of life?
Right.
That's the goal. Now, how can you achieve that? How can you attain that goal? Let's look at the options around us. Let's not let the options around us dictate where we go.
Mm-hmm.
Let us dictate where we're going, and we use these tools and things around us to get there.
Right.
What do you want out of life? What do you want out of life?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder, first of all, it's not to jump off of the subject matter, but it could be still looked at. You know, we have a Connecticut governor's race in 1 month, and is there going to be
less than 40 days?
Less than 40 days. Do you see some resources, some opportunities that could be politically connected to the current governor or the candidate that's running for governor? Or is this
you have to rephrase. I don't understand the question.
Do you see some type of resources and benefit and opportunities
for who?
For, let's even say, for accesstv.org network.
No.
You don't see any.
I'm not looking for any.
You're not looking for anything. So that's on you now. That's not on the government structure.
I don't expect them to do anything for me except stay out my way.
There's nothing that you think the governor could do to be instrumental in accesstv.org network, or you just not interested?
I'm not interested in him being involved in accesstv.org. He can stay out of my way. That's all he can do for me. I don't expect him to. I have no expectation that he should. Why should he do anything for me? He's the governor. Well, he's not. I mean, he's not he's not my dad or not great uncle.
But you have let's say a social media television network. So media is something that people say is needed.
Well, he has all the media resources he needs.
Right.
So if I wanted to be his media person, then I could go make a plan, pitch it to him, and see if I am good enough or serve his purpose. There's at least 300 or 400 people do what I do in the state of Connecticut. I mean, why? If it's me, it's not going to be somebody else.
Okay.
I'm not interested in working for the government.
Not working, but so accesstv.org network is fine. You don't need any assistance. You don't.
I need nothing,
okay,
Jonathan,
that's
for accesstv.org. Now, there's a lot of people who would like to do stuff in conjunction with,
right,
and see opportunities. But those visions are not mine.
Right.
If they see that, then let them do that on their own.
Yes.
They're not willing to do this on their own. If
Right.
you need me to make your reality happen, then you will be dependent on me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good thing for you. Because I'm not going to ever adjust what I'm doing because someone else thinks it's a good idea.
Okay. So again, there's really no conversation needed towards the governor and yourself, at least towards the network. Now, it might be some things that you might want to see.
No, I mean, if something has happened that's really interesting, I think, I might cover it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the governor called and say, is it possible to do an interview on your program? Absolutely. But that I would give that to anybody.
Well, black media, is that in solid shape in Connecticut?
Absolutely not.
So
black media is not black media's success or failure is not dependent on the governor or the government.
The government, right?
If it is doomed out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
The government has not shown itself to be open and friendly toward advancing the voice of black folk. I'm just keeping it real.
Okay.
Why would anyone hope the government helps? When you get to that level, something's wrong, in my opinion.
Well, there's no need, to address this to the governor. You don't think, or the governor or the candidate that's running for governor, you don't see no need of addressing the importance of black media in Connecticut?
I think the only thing that elected officials need to understand as it pertains to black media is that when black media or reporters come and ask them questions, that they are given the same opportunity to have an audience as their counterparts in other media.
Okay.
That's all. Because they represent a constituency that needs to be informed. So if you're having a press conference, you send the press releases out. If you're having a press conference or on an emergency medical or emergency health issue, that they're allowed to be at the questioning session just like everyone else.
Right.
That black media only needs access.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
The rest is on them to do, just like every other media outlet has to do. They have to go out and knock on doors, call up, sell the network to get commercials, which is how commercial accounts pay for everything.
Well, I know they had the governor's meet and greet or candidate forum yesterday in Hartford with Governor Ned Lamont and
that actually changed up a little bit because the Bailey dinner was yesterday too. So from the meet and greet really turned into a community conversation, from what I understand.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of the electeds were at another event.
Okay.
It's almost mandatory if you're a Democrat that you be at the John Bailey dinner. It's like the Bush dinner. The Republicans have one too. Mm-hmm. It's a major party event.
Okay.
You fail to show up that at your own political.
Right. So
but for me, the governor, I want to know what do you consider the end of the declared health emergency that we're currently under? And what would it take for you to say that we're no longer under it? Do you think that being in the health emergency is beneficial only because there are federal monies tied to it? If that's the case, then it's not about health, it's about money. Mm. But these are the kind of questions I would ask the governor. These are the kinds of things the governor could do for me. What is your philosophy on spending tax dollars? What's your philosophy on taxing people? Why do you think it's a good idea to say that people who have religious points of views should be mandatorily vaccinated? I mean, I would ask questions on policy and execution of policy, which is his charge as the governor. I'm not looking for him to do anything except run the state efficiently.
Right.
So all of my concerns and questions are going to be toward how will he, as a steward to me, a constituent, manage my government? Because the government belongs to us, the people, not him,
right?
Not the mayor, not the city council people. It belongs to us. So my questions and comments to them are in that light. So if I go to McDonald's, I expect them to give me a free Happy Meal. But I do expect a Happy Meal to have all the things in it. Where's my fries? Oh, I'm sorry. That's the problem. So he has a job. What are your qualifications for health commissioner? Why was the one that you had dismissed and the one you now have hired?
Right.
I would like to hear a rationale beyond talking points. I don't have a problem with your decisions because those are the decisions that you can rightfully make as the elected official. But why? Those are the kinds of things I would ask.
Yeah. So your why is really a different why perspective than when I want to know why something. You know me, I like to know why something always happened, but there's a connecting factor when you want to know why from the governor.
Well, I think our whys may be the same, but you asked me, what can he do for me? He can't do nothing for me.
Right.
I don't want him to do anything for me. I'm not going to ask him to do anything for me.
Okay, let's move it away, let's say, from you. You like to speak up many times for the community. You like to advocate things for the greater Hartford area or Hartford as a community resident. So separating yourself for what you would like to see the governor or the government do, what would you think would be needed or helpful from the government in Connecticut towards impacting the city where you live at?
I think that in that light, I think that initiatives can be undertaken that are going to move forward opportunities for economic development within areas impacted by poverty.
Right.
How can what initiatives would you sign as governor to help move forward North Hartford? Specifically, I know there are other areas, but I'm here in North Hartford, so that's the one I'm concerned about. All right, and other areas within the city of Hartford impacted by poverty, because poverty is very well camouflaged in Hartford.
Right,
and Hartford's a poor city. So, what economic policies would you be willing to sign as governor that would impact impoverished communities in the city of Hartford? For my legislators, I would ask, what kind of legislation would you propose be written or worked on to help mitigate poverty, and beyond mitigation, eliminate poverty with economic empowerment as the foundation? What would that legislation look like? Those are the kinds of questions I'd ask. I could care less if you could double dutch, play basketball. None of that stuff's impressive to me. It's offensive to me personally. So what kind of things? Because those are the things that's going to help the community. All right. Because if people have economic freedom, they don't have to work under the stress of survivalism.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that because their job is to create legislation. His job is going to be to sign it.
Right.
All right. So depending upon who's running for office, there are different questions. Well, and those are kinds of questions I wouldn't.
Former Connecticut State Representative Brandon McGee is on his campaign team.
Yes.
Now, chances are, if Governor Ned Lamont gets reelected, Brandon McGee is going to be, I guess, appointed or maybe a key position. I don't know what the position would be. Would, let's say, Brandon McGee be somewhat of the link, saying that he used to represent, what the Hartford Windsor district was? It was the first district that he used to be the first representative.
It's 5th district.
5th district, okay. So he should understand the needs and the issues.
He does understand.
He does understand that.
He should. He does.
He does, okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, he ran for mayor, I believe, in Hartford a few years ago, like yourself. 2019.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he should be kind of like used as the link? Because sometimes getting to the governor is not going to be that simple,
Getting to the governor is not that difficult.
It's not that difficult?
No.
Getting to meet with the governor, setting up a meeting, you don't think it's difficult? You could just call the governor and say, I would like to meet the governor.
Depending upon, I think the people who need to get in touch with the governor to move these kinds of agendas forward, it's not difficult for them to get in touch with the governor. If you're just walking down the street and have an idea and you think you're going to roll up on the governor, that's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you actually are not in a position to actually do anything either. So, we're talking about serious ideas. You're not going to have a problem getting to the governor.
So the president of the African American Alliance, yourself, it wouldn't be that difficult for you to set up a meeting with the governor, to set up a...
No.
You could do that?
These people are not as detached and untouchable as you may think they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're regular people. You can make appointments to see them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to stop what they're doing and see you, but you can make appointments to see them. But you have to have a reason
that's what I
to see them.
Yeah,
And if you have a reason, they will see you. They're not
right.
They're not opposed to meeting with the constituency.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even beyond just meeting with them now, the next step, if you want your agenda implemented, I think it's one thing to meet with someone and just have a meeting. It's another thing, okay, we met. This is what I would like to see take place.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is your hypothetical, Jonathan. It's a given that you have a reason to meet with him. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no reason to meet with him, then why would he meet with you?
Well, the real question I should ask is getting your agenda implemented now. Is that so much? That's not that simple now to be implemented. It might be easier in an election year.
Right. No. Your agenda is an idea of things you would like to move forward.
Okay.
If you are a group of 100 people,
mm-hmm.
you are 100 people out of 2 million in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
What makes your agenda better than anyone else's?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can't have what they want.
Right.
There's an expectation that at the very least, you should be given an audience.
Mm-hmm.
Anything beyond that is up for grabs.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't expect, because I have an agenda or a group I represent has an agenda, that because I have it, these people are supposed to make it happen. It is not on them to move my agenda forward. It is on me to move my agenda forward. It's on our group to move our agenda forward, with an understanding that just because we have it doesn't mean it will happen.
Right.
Our guest this morning, father had a vision and a dream to move forward a city.
Right.
A bold agenda, a bold vision. It didn't happen.
Right.
Because you have an agenda means nothing. It's a good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But you have an agenda doesn't mean it has to happen. So most agendas and ideas that people have don't happen.
Right.
So, Elon Musk wants to go to the moon. Go to Mars. That don't mean he's going to make it. But God bless him for having a vision.
Right.
At least he had a vision and he tried. That's all anyone can do.
No, but I understand that part, Stan. But there's supposed to be certain funding and money allocated in Connecticut, like other states throughout the country. Like Hartford depends on the pilot program, because it doesn't get enough tax-based revenue for the fact that it has a lot of tax-exempt properties.
But that's the city.
That's the city.
Don't confuse what the city's supposed to get with some group that wants to do something.
All right.
That's not pilot money for them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's say in the paper this morning, there's an article about a new restaurant that opened up where Max Max Bebo was on the corner of Maine and Buckingham, and where it switches over to go down right around the corner here. The city had some grants, $150,000 that was available to different people. It's a Jamaican restaurant. It seems like a pretty nice place. Now, only one person gonna get that. There are several of these grants that went out. Everyone can't get it.
Right.
Some people gonna be mad because they didn't get it. Others are gonna be glad because they did. That's just life. So yeah, there are money set aside, but that's not a guarantee that you're going to get the money.
Right. That's true.
So the monies are there. People can apply for the monies. They can take their agenda forward. They pitch their idea. The people who make those decisions give ear to the idea, and boom.
Yeah.
Now, if they won't listen to you or hear your idea or entertain your idea, now we got a problem.
Okay.
That's a problem.
That's the problem.
But if they gave ear to you, duly considered your idea, and your idea didn't get chosen, that's life. Move on.
Right.
What next? Try something out. Go some other town. Try another vision. Try another. You don't let someone stop you because it said no. The other opportunity would be to raise the money yourself.
That's the bet. That could.
You see, now you're not dependent on the government for nothing.
Exactly.
You don't owe them anything. They're not in your pocket. They're not looking at your books. They're not analyzing you. They're not coming into one to do an audit. They're not telling you how many people you got to hire, who to hire. So there's a certain level of freedom one has when one is not dependent on the largesse of the collective whole's tax dollars being allocated to you.
Well, the part you mentioned about raising the money yourself, now that sounds like that would be something worth. I guess you would be in more control of that. One way or the other. Either you can raise the money or you can't raise the money.
Well, you alluded to it earlier. Ownership,
right.
See, when you own something, you don't have to listen to nobody else.
Exactly.
Right, but if we give you a little money, let's not forget where you got started. A little cheese factory started off with 100 pounds of cheese that we saved, that we gave you.
Right.
And
well, again, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, this is not different than any other place throughout the country because, like I said, we just interviewed someone from Soul City, North Carolina, and it sounds like to me there's still some things that's bothering Dr. McKissick.
The history of what happened,
is
bothersome.
It's bothersome
to her because she lived it. To others because they're familiar with it. It's a very, very sad happening. Because one person in general derailed everything because he had a point of view that was at variance. He felt that federal funds shouldn't be used for that. And he was open and upfront. I'm not gonna make it happen. He was a Democrat, a conservative Democrat.
Jesse Helms, the former
that ran as a Republican. Right. I mean, no mistake from where the hatred actually came from.
The Democratic
side,
yes.
Jesse Helms. Because Republicans at that time were very, very embracive of moving agendas for black people. Particularly down in the South and blacks. And the Democrats were not.
Well, she mentioned former President Richard Nixon was the one that had some allocation of the funds being sent out for this project. I think she mentioned $14 million was what it was. What I guess it was awarded $14 million.
He wasn't gonna stand by and let it happen.
Yeah,
and he derailed it. That's but so you may have ideas. But your idea is one in the marketplace. So there is always going to be someone who is against what you want to do. That's life. There's always another side to the coin. And people seem to forget. They want to ignore the other side. The other side is there. They're working against you. How do you deal with the opposition? And that's a very, very important thing to consider when you're putting forth your plan. There are people opposed to it. What are you going to tell them? How are you going to work with them? And some people just, sometimes you can't win.
Can't win, yeah. A no-win situation.
So you decide to do something else. Unless you're just in it for the money. I mean, in it for the principle. And, you're going to, this is your cross to bear. And if you have to die on the way there, then so be it. And there are people who make that decision and they go down as martyrs.
Right. I looked at the program you did with Luis Delgado. Very interesting. I didn't watch the entire show, but I watched part of it and watched it on demand. And then y'all got into the part about, you was talking about, you wanted to get your son to save money or come up with a different type of plan. And Luis was asking you different questions. But the one thing he was trying to bring back some principles about how the family used to stay together, and it's like he doesn't buy into, or he don't feel that we should buy into societal methods saying, well, you gotta move out, you gotta pay rent for an apartment or something on that level that y'all was talking about. He was describing that the family used to stay together. And you didn't say it was anything wrong with that. You just said we live in today's time where people do.
We don't live in the land
of what used to be.
Right. Used to be is not a place of. Used to be is not a real place.
But
it should.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. If Luis feels that we still should be functioning the way things used to be. See, sometimes that's like you just mentioned. We can't sometimes live in the past. I think his whole beliefs is he doesn't buy into the system here in America. I mean, long and short of it, Luis has a different perspective how he feels.
Yeah, I love Brother Luis, but he and I aren't on the same page on many things.
And this included.
And on other things we are.
Right.
But he's entitled to that belief. And as much as he wants to embrace it, that's cool. The other 349 million don't.
Right.
Now, there may be a million out there with him, but they ain't the million running things. So those are the folks you have to be aware of. Because they're real, they are present, and that is the system that we live under. So it behooves young people to be ready and prepared to manage their lives. Because the more mom and dad take care of them, the more they're not going to be prepared for the brutality of the real world.
And who's to say that mom and dad can even do a good job today taking care? There's issues in the family where mom and dad is not taking care of their own children that they brought into the world.
There you go.
So we got to keep it real. Mom and dads are not all working, doing the job as a parent now. They may be mother and father, but there's many cases you can say mom and dad, many times just mom, but let's just give it the benefit of the doubt. Mom and dad is not really doing what they needs to be doing.
Absolutely. So, in the land of used to, dad was around, mom was around, and they didn't have any choice but to live in one place because they couldn't get anywhere else.
Right.
So, depending upon, the Kennedy clan has a big compound. The royal family has a big compound. All right. But ask Harry and Meghan where they are on the social ladder of the royals, at the bottom with Andrew. So one thing about living in an environment where it's very family or where you have a family structure, who's in charge? Generally dad.
Right.
The kids want to do something, dad doesn't think that's a good idea. And eventually it comes down to, well, in this house, your father makes the decisions. And if you want to stay in this house, you need to duly consider that. So at some point, the kids are going to leave.
All right.
Because their vision is going to be different than dad and mom's vision. They have their own lives to live. And when that time comes, I think they should be ready. That's all.
Preparation. Preparation is very important.
Yeah.
And It's just like a couple of weeks ago, we talked what Ronnie feels about young kids thinking they're going to become NBA basketball players. And at some point, when that becomes realized that you're not going to become a national basketball player, then you better have something to move forward towards.
Particularly if you're like 30 years old.
Right.
Keep living toward the dream. You're not gonna make it on the M. You're not. The NBA is not sending a scout out to this neighborhood basketball court and picking you. You're 28.
Right. Well, I told you again what the person told me a long time ago. If you're not established in the NBA by 25, 26, it's unlikely that you're going to become a professional basketball player.
Right.
So, but you have you're still a very young person. And
Absolutely.
you can have a long term, if God's willing, with health, a very fulfilled life in other areas. So you would assume is the key word, that with all of the so-called opportunities, let's say, that exist today, a person shouldn't have an issue fitting into the economy. But that's not the case, though.
A person shouldn't have any issues. But like we talked about earlier, in the same arena, maybe not sitting on the same row or the same section, but in the same arena with caring is the person caring. What do they desire to do? If they don't desire to do something, they won't. Just like the person doesn't care. They don't care. So they don't care. You can't make people care. And you can't make people have a desire to go after all those opportunities. They desire to be a basketball player. They desire to be a whatever. And they sometimes set their goals on those things, and they just keep going. And they keep going, they keep going, they keep going. People desire to be Hollywood actors. They move out to California, take a job doing, working at a wait stand. I was literally sitting, I might have told this story before. I was sitting at a table across from me, almost as close as you are. Maybe a little bit closer, because it was a big table. Was Maurice Starr.
Yeah, you did mention that story before.
All right. Girl comes up, and she, he's there as the entourage. Maybe about 10 people. No more than that. She says, "Oh, Mr. Starr, I love, like New Kids on the Block," and she started naming off all the different people. He says, "Oh, really?" He says, "So what do you do?" She says, "Well, I'm a singer." He says, "Oh, what?" Because he has a really very soft voice. "Oh, really, really? How about that? So you sing?" She says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, sing something for me." Oh, I could never do that. I was like not prepared. It was unbelievable. And then, he talked a little bit, and then she left.
Right. So she didn't capitalize on the opportunity that was presented in front of her.
There's someone sitting in front of you. They could pick up the phone and make you a superstar.
Right.
And you won't audition. That's an opportunity.
Right.
That's an opportunity.
Well, I don't want to sit here and say right now what's taking place with adults. I mean, not so much just young people, just with adults in general is any different.
And she wasn't a kid. She like 22, 23, 24, somewhere around there. At the youngest, she was 19. But she's a young adult. This is in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah, you got to be ready whenever. Sometimes you may not be realizing that you're going to meet someone that could set your goals in a position to be implemented, but obviously you got to be ready at that any given time.
You walk into a place to apply for a job. You're talking to someone who has the capacity to give you an opportunity to move forward. There's all kinds of opportunities. But does that person want to take advantage of them? So they are the key to the opportunity. Not that we need to throw. We need 100 million more opportunities so that one person will choose one. They need to make decision as to what it is in life they want, and then seek out those opportunities and make it happen. I'm just of the mindset, if you don't have the motivation to go after the opportunities that are out there, then that's,
well, again,
I hate to say it, but that's on you.
Well, again, I mean, you're saying it's still up to you through no fault of your own if you don't know what exists. I mean, sometimes you don't buy that cop-out excuse that a person...
Jonathan, you have to go look for them. That's
right.
what the want ads are. Remember
right.
the old days you got the paper and there was the want ads in the paper?
Right.
You can go online and look for opportunities. There's Indeed. There's all kinds of things. You can knock on there. You can drive down city streets and rural roads and see help wanted signs.
Yeah.
There's help wanted signs at Target. There's help wanted signs at Whole Foods. There's help wanted signs at restaurants. There's help wanted signs on billboards for electric boats.
Yeah, well, let's kind of separate now, because you're talking now jobs. The whole method about Soul City, I just use that as an example, is a bigger picture than just looking for a job. Now, a job, yes, you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to run against a job opportunity today, because there's so many companies literally begging people for jobs. The bigger picture is, if you have a vision or an opportunity to see yourself even as an owner of something, that you, instead of you living in the hood, sleeping on your parents' couch, thinking this is the best that you can do, you could have the vision to own something,
but your hypothetical is inconsistent with reality, in my never to be humble opinion. You could have the vision, but they don't. That's why they're sleeping on their parents' couch. So you could, we don't live in the land of could. The reality is they don't have the vision.
But is our leadership failing people in the big sense? Are we not advocating the need for owning something? In Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, are we really having the so-called leadership saying that the people in the community could have a direct, what he said again, own control and have a direct stake at where you live at?
Of their own business? Because we were mixing business with where they live.
Community could be business. It could be home ownership rate. It could be other forms of development. I think, not to know everything about Soul City, but I think it was a bigger picture. Ownership of a home could be part of it. Owning businesses could be another part of it. Having other things in your community that you would like to see implemented, instead of, let's say, Keeney Park is not an upscale park like Elizabeth Park. That park could be transformed. This so-called thing.
But Jonathan,
that's the big picture.
Right. How's it going to happen? How's that part going to, how are any of these things going to happen if the people who could have the vision don't? That's why I say we don't live in the land of could.
Well, they at fault then.
There's no one at fault. It's just not something that they desire to have. It's something someone else may desire for them. But their desire for them to have it doesn't mean that those people want it.
So that means if we have in our inner cities a permanent underclass structure, and people don't see that there's something wrong with this picture, or like Dr. McKissick said, they just don't care enough. Something got to be wrong to want to accept a permanent underclass structure.
Unfortunately, Jonathan, there are underclass in every society. I don't want to sound like an elitist. I'm just keeping it real.
Mm-hmm.
We make it sound like because people don't have a lot of money, they're somehow underclass. They just don't have a lot of money.
Well, that's a problem, though.
No, it's not a lot of. It's not
money. It's
a
problem.
Jonathan, I know a lot of people who live within their means. Now, if some live within their means, people that don't have a lot of money are quality, decent. Kids are smart. They go to school. They live within their means. They're not in debt. They just don't have a lot of money.
I'm not talking about the characteristics, Dan. I'm not talking about a good.
But Jonathan,
honest,
if you don't have money and you're not motivated to go get it,
right,
then it is on that individual. It is not the city council's responsibility. It's not the pastor's responsibility. It's not the community advocate's responsibility. It's not the neighborhood watch people's responsibility. It is the responsibility of the individual who wants better to get better.
But again, if that's the case, for you said Hartford is the third now poorest city per capita. So I'm taking
per capita, yes.
Per capita. So that means there's more than one person that's poor and don't have enough resources. So if everybody that's poor in Hartford
is in the grips of poverty, there's a difference between poverty and being poor. Poverty is the result of many, many different things. Poverty can be mitigated if you have the right officials who care. But they don't care, Jonathan.
But that contributes to a permanent underclass structure.
It does.
Poverty is a link.
So what are you going to do to remove it other than what should be?
Well, you said it first, Dan. It starts with the one individual. So you saying that everybody, if you're in the grips of poverty or you find yourself as a permanent underclass, that it comes on you to take the first lead.
Absolutely.
So there's no disagreement with that part, Stan. The bigger picture is as you as one individual towards you as what you think the community, because the community, like you just mentioned, the city council, the representatives, the people who control economic development funds, they still have a role that plays, that contributes towards factors in the city that's in grips of poverty. You can't separate the two.
But the role that they play is in concert with the constituents that put them there. The constituent has to drive this, Jonathan. It can't be driven from the top down. You don't think pastors in Hartford or any other poor place care about their congregants? You don't think the imams care about? You don't think that the rabbis care? You don't think that the city council people care? You don't think the mayor cares or the governor? They care about all these people. They're trying to do all kinds of stuff. You don't think that all of the people that are out there, social justice warriors, going down trying to write legislation, you don't think they care about the people that are poor? So why are the poor still here?
Well, here's the thing about when you're saying you kind of said it that, not having money or resources is not the problem, or it's not, people can still live a fulfilled life. If you're a so-called person that runs an organization that you're trying to eradicate poverty, and the best you could offer someone towards, let's say, an opportunity to generate revenue or lead someone in that direction is, let's say, an income of a couple $100s a week, comparable that it's going to take more than that, because you and Luis was talking about what it costs to run a household. When you pay rent, you pay utility bills, you buy food, you need a certain amount of money, even when you're living within your means. Because today you can't even get a somewhat decent apartment, for a 2-bedroom apartment, for less than $1,000, and that's
not in Hartford.
Not in Hartford.
Okay. You may have to leave Hartford.
Right.
Then you would be living within your means.
Within your means. So leave. Okay, I understand that.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, put it like this.
And if you live in a building that you may not own, but it's a building that you call your home, invest in the place that you live and make it a better place.
Right.
Turn you a community that's living in a place that isn't all that in a bag of chips could get together and determine, you know what, this clown ain't coming up here from New York or anywhere else. He could care less about this building, but we live here. And in the land of should, he should be putting new doors on here. He should be doing stuff about the fact that it's mold infested. I mean, roach and rat infested and got mold growing everywhere. But you know what, let us get together and turn this place into the kind of place
yes,
that will make him upset. Right. And then we take it by eminent domain or something like that. There has to be a desire and a drive by people to control their destiny. If they don't control their destiny, if there's no incentive, if there's no motivation from the individual to do better, then they won't.
Right.
If you have a football team and members of the team aren't motivated to come to practice, they get paid and they're fined for being late. At some point, you have to take them off the team.
You're right.
Because The coach can't motivate them. The money's not motivating them. The girlfriend or husband or wife ain't motivating them.
Right.
I mean, so what do? There's a certain amount of the person that's being affected that has to do something.
You have to be mentally strong just as much as physically strong to function, because whenever something in your life that derails you for that moment, you can't let it keep you down. You know, I lost a good job. I got my money swindled out of. Now I'm in the red. I got other factors. I mean, I'm just using those two as an example. You know, I don't have enough money for a security down payment. I don't have enough money for a down payment on a home, although you will hear certain organizations saying that they could work with you to get your credit rating improved and get you in a position that you can. So there should still be no legitimate excuse.
Right, and that's a desire to do better. Someone is trying to do better.
To do better. But it's always saying you have to kind of work hand in hand. You got to be willing to do your part.
Absolutely.
So if you're beat down in the hood and you find yourself having a permanent underclass structure, you got to want it bad enough to lift yourself up. At least to make yourself a presentation.
Right. Lift yourself up so that you can reach out and grab the hand of the person who's doing their part to help you get up. You know.
But my only point when I was saying about the differences, and it's still a problem of having more resources, Bishop Leroy Bailey can do more at the First Cathedral Church towards hiring staff members than this Liberty Victory. I don't know if it's Liberty Church at the corner of Albany Avenue and Vine Street. That's the difference. One example of the difference right there between having more resources and more capital to deal with. Bishop Bailey can hire people that works in his church, that they're making livable wages, that the bishop or the pastor at the corner of Albany Avenue and Vine Street just can't do.
Well, then
he may want to help people, but he don't have the.
But Jonathan, that is life. I don't want to sound cruel, but I mean, you know, there's no end of picking how this person can do something and that one can't.
But
and having said that, now what?
But that's the difference of having money and resources. You say it's life.
So
it is life.
There's nothing that precludes Liberty Christian Center from having more money than they have. To whom much is given, much is required. So you could start off with a little bit of money and get more money. The First Cathedral out in Bloomfield wasn't always out in Bloomfield. They used to be up on Blue Hills Avenue.
Or was it Greenfield Street?
I mean, on Greenfield Street.
Yes.
All right.
So that means it comes on Bishop Bailey. Bishop Bailey.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pushing to the stretch here. If I'm not mistaken, before they were on Greenfield Street, I think they were on Blue Hills. This is the way back, but we won't go way that far back. We'll go back to Greenfield.
Right.
Greenfield Street is in the same community, in the same neighborhood as Liberty Christian Center.
Right.
Up the block, down the street.
Right.
Neighbors. Same community.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
At the time when Liberty Christian Center was in its rocking and rolling, and Greenfield Street, where First Baptist Church was.
First Baptist Church, yes.
Right? Because it was First Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost positive they was on Blue Hills at one time.
It could have been.
Okay. Those are issues of leadership and vision.
Mm.
And the difference between leaders.
Mm.
Not that one is better.
Right.
As long as people are individuals, they will have different visions. They will seek to do different things. You cannot make those kinds of comparisons.
It's not a good comparison comparing.
I don't think you can. Things are the way they are until they aren't.
Right.
So what is the plan to make a change? As the Bible says, The people perish for lack of vision. If there's no vision, the people perish. A vision is nothing more than a means by which to resolve a problem.
Right.
And if you don't have a vision, the problem remains. Now, we take a walk through any part of Hartford where there's poverty, and we'll ask, what is the vision to fix this?
Right.
Folk ain't got one. So it'll remain that way until people come up with a solution that fixes the problem. Not what should, not advocating, not raising money that pays for the people raising the money but doesn't go to the people who are actually in the need. All right? Because the need doesn't change.
But let me just make sure I get an answer to this problem or question. The people that are born and raised or moved into high poverty areas, they're the ones that's at fault for their predicament.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
They're not no more than the people who were hit by the hurricane they're not responsible for their predicament. They are responsible for what they do next.
Okay. That's true. Okay.
Ship capsizes and you're on it. You're not responsible for the predicament, but you are responsible for what you do next.
Okay.
The water's cold.
Right.
40 degrees.
Right.
You better find a way to get up out of it. Life is not fair.
Right.
We live in that people walk around acting like life is fair and they should get a good shake and someone owes them something. That is not the case. I mean, I'm just keeping it real. You can think that way all you want, but in the real world, no one owes you anything.
Well, you just answered my next question because I asked you this or stated this last week, that you're not entitled a community, that you have the resources and things that you need just because it exists or it can exist. So there's no entitlement of a guaranteed community where, because like you mentioned, Bishop Leroy Bailey started off, Greenfield Street. I don't know if he started, him personally was on Blue Hills Avenue, but he started it, I know of, on Greenfield Street. So it's not to say that. And who's the pastor for the Liberty Church on Albany? What's his name?
I don't know who's the pastor there now. I know who used to be. Okay. But whatever the case is, I'm not saying Bishop Leroy Bailey is better than whoever the pastor is at the corner of Albany and Vine Street. The Liberty Church, you say? It's the Liberty Christian Center.
Liberty Christian Center. That's not about Bishop Bailey being a better person, because sometimes you kind of throw that at me when I talk about not having resources or not having money.
He has a different vision.
Yes.
Right.
But he can do things. See, that's the key. As you always say, money is a tool. So it is
money
important.
is a tool. Jonathan, his vision is different, and because he was true to his vision and executed those things have paid dividends.
Right.
He didn't start off with the money.
He built the money.
The money builds up over time.
Right.
Everyone has the same time. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. What are you going to do with your time? For every community in the grips of poverty, we will find some who are not there anymore.
Right.
Came out of that same community.
Right.
So there's something that the opportunity is there.
Yes.
There are some people who have an opportunity to leave the place they were born, put their life at risk, get in the back of a truck, swim over water to get to the United States and make it.
Right. Well, there's no disagreement with that.
Right. So what is it that drives a person to success relative to the person who doesn't have success? And who's responsible for making them successful?
Right. Well, again, you said it comes down to the individual to get yourself out of the predicament. You are not at fault how you got in the predicament, although some people could say you wasted your life. You did.
Whether you are or are not, right. You're in a predicament. Now, what are you going to do to get out of it?
That's the key. Okay, you have the same opportunities. Now, I think you may debate the people, let's say, doing business in Blue Black Square, West Hartford, have different opportunities than what you might see on Upper Albany Avenue. But the individual still has the mindset. He still, if God's giving you the health and strength to, to move forward and at least try at the very least. Now, are you going to keep it real? Obviously, you don't see mixed use development opportunities like you see in Blue Back Square in West Hartford that you might see in the north end of Hartford.
Well, there's Jonathan.
That's where having money makes a difference.
Right. If there were, if we wind up with a mixed use facility in the north end of Hartford that can compete with Blue Back Square, then understand and know that North Hartford has changed.
Right.
All the poor people that are there are living somewhere else.
Right.
Their poverty didn't go anywhere. They went somewhere. So the gentrifiers come in, the colonizers come in and displace those people. We don't know where you're going, but you're getting up out of here. And then the community flips. Now you've got all kinds of you have a different cohort of human beings living there that have economic means.
Right.
Now, North Hartford isn't the only place that there's poverty.
I know that.
There's poverty in white communities as well. So let's not make it seem like only black folk is in the grips of poverty.
No.
You go out and drive around in the hinterlands of Connecticut. There are plenty of poor folk up out there.
I understand. I was just using because they're bordered towns. I was just using the two as an example.
Well, why not? Let's compare West Hartford Center to one of the low-lying double wide communities out near Rockville. But see, folk don't make those comparisons. Why isn't there economic growth out there in those communities where there's, or right here in East Hartford? Next across from the
Rensselaer football,
next to the factory where you have your the Coca-Cola factory,
right
behind Dunkin' Donuts. Behind Dairy Queen.
You would rather see a better comparison East Hartford to West Hartford or West Hartford to Rockville?
No. Why are those people still living over there, shopping at Seatown across the street? That's poor. That's poor.
Yeah. Poor. I know. I understand. Poor
so there's a lot of poor people, and they're not all black.
I understand that part, Stan. And wealthy people, black people, live in Bloomfield,
and there's a lot of wealthy black people too.
Right. I understand that part.
Right.
But the point is, and I think I already know the answer, but I'll still address it anyway. What is keeping the community from not developing? Because you always say you're concerned with where you live at. You're not concerned with other places throughout the state and throughout the country. So I will put it back to Hartford. What is keeping mixed-use development, growth, and opportunities in businesses non-existent or at the level that they should be in Hartford?
Developers do not believe that they can get a return on their on their investment in this town.
Okay.
And when that changes, you will see those things starting to happen.
Right.
It just had an opening of a new place downtown. It's got storefronts on the first level, and shops upstairs. Apartments upstairs, overlooking the stadium. There are a lot of those plans, but we have stores downtown Hartford right now that don't have occupants.
Right. Well, my eyewear store, Harvey and Lewis, has been there since 1890.
And they're about the only ones there. On Asylum Avenue.
Asylum Avenue, right.
You got knucklehead kids riding around putting M80s on the glass and blowing the glass out.
I was down
there.
So,
when that starts happening to your downtown,
right,
one of two things. Either kids is running out of control or reckless, or people are perceiving it as kind of like ghost town and abandoned.
Right.
Where you can get away with those kinds of things because there's no foot traffic, there's no people around.
Right.
Though this was done in midday.
So
there's a lack of presence in the storefronts downtown. And you can tell me it mixed. You can incentivize people to come and build.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're going to stay or that it's going to be profitable. They're in the business of building, so they got paid. They got paid, they built, they gone on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you build it doesn't mean people will come.
Right.
And if they come, it doesn't mean that they will stay.
Right.
So there's a whole different mindset and attitude and vision associated with downtown growth in Hartford than there is in midtown growth in West Hartford.
Right. Because it looks booming. I mean, I got to be upfront, man.
Of course,
West
it's booming.
Hartford,
And
booming.
West Hartford has many the people who frequent those places
Mm-hmm.
have disposable and discretionary money.
Right.
And they're going to spend it.
They're going to spend it, yes.
So they spend it close to home.
Right.
West Hartford is a totally different community than Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
The predominant wealth force in West Hartford is Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
There is a cultural difference. The Sabbath is celebrated from Friday to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from Friday to Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so, historically, culturally, you don't do any work.
Okay.
You walk
Right.
to and from. And so, there's a difference. Meals are shared differently. It's so cultural. So there is a culture that stays very close and connected and stays and walks and shops with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is your base, others can come and take advantage of it, but there's a base that keeps that thing going. That's not the case in Hartford.
Right.
So you can't just take West Hartford and plop it down because there's something successful there without looking at the whole picture as to what makes it successful.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Could you create a kind of community in Hartford where the people who actually live in Hartford frequent the places? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not the vision that the people that make the big decisions have.
Right.
Their plan is to bring people from outside of Hartford into Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are here are an inconvenient presence. Keep them away.
Keep them away, right. And if you're blowing up buildings in the broad daylight with M80s or whatever they did,
Right.
I mean, I was downtown when that actually. I wasn't there when it happened, but I was there when the police presence was there.
Right.
And one of the workers at Harvey and Lewis told me I guess they have to lock up, take all of the designer eyewears out of the glass shelf because they got broken into. You know, somebody took I don't know what they took, but they had broke the window to get inside the business. They got a security alarm system now, and they got everything in place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not to say that can't happen in West Hartford Center, but
It's not likely.
But it's not likely to happen in West Hartford Center. You're not going to be breaking.
Put up with that.
They're not going to put up with that. And actually, I really like Harvey and Lewis. I really like the people there. I really feel comfortable there. I like doing business with them for a long period of time.
They have a clientele that continues to come and support them, such as yourself, and as long as that happens, they might be there for another 100 years. But they're one of the few. The camera shop down the street's another one. They don't take their stuff out the window. They have gates all over, so you might break the glass, but you're not getting anything.
You're not getting inside, yeah.
Right, but you know, imagine if you're sitting out in the suburbs thinking about coming into Hartford to go to a play, and you're now pondering, well, gee whiz, if we go out to eat, is some knucklehead going to put an M80 on the glass and blow it up?
Yeah.
That's real.
That's real, right.
Yeah, you get on top of that like yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, there's the perceptions continue to negatively impact Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
And those little tiny things can undermine the vision and the long-term growth that some of these people have. But, you know, the short-term goal may be able to deal with that and accept that. The long-term vision for Hartford to be successful has to be based on gentrification and colonization. That's the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise, you know, the people in Hartford can't afford these places. So then absolutely not building them for Hartfordites.
For Hartfordites, right. Well, truthfully, in business, you have to build something where you're going to get a return on your investment. If you're going to sit around worrying about people in Hartford getting enough money, it's they're not going to get it. So if getting people in with money,
they're not sitting around worrying about the poor in Hartford. I can guarantee you.
Right. Yeah.
They may give them a grant here and a grant there, but they are absolutely not trying to change their lives.
Right.
I could say that without fear of contradiction because they're still here without any change.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least show me where you tried and messed up. Where's the failure?
Right.
See, we know that they tried to put a studio in South Windsor.
Mm-hmm.
We know they tried because they failed.
They failed.
So they failed because they tried. Where's the failure? Where's the failure to all of the things that need to be done to help the people in Hartford?
Well, what Ebony Horsewoman, they tried to do something in Keeney Park.
Killed her vision.
So she had an attempt.
She had a beautiful plan. It would have been very nice. It would have worked. It was brilliant. And then you had the folk that just killed it.
Mm-hmm. I believe not enough people on city council voted for it.
They worked against to undermine and kill her program, period.
Okay. So
they didn't kill her. They killed her dream.
They killed her dream, which is a major setback.
Right.
I mean, you might go there now and see some horses, roaming around.
It's nothing like what the vision was.
Yeah.
But you got to go. You got to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But they killed her. They killed the vision and the dream.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you having her on One Hartford with Kevin Brookman. Y'all really gave her, media coverage, and she was able to explain what her goals were.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, one of many. I mean, I don't know if Adrian Landon was killed, but what is Adrian Landon really doing?
Well, I mean, there's some success down there.
Yeah,
the Science Center's down there.
Center.
I don't know how successful it is if it's not underwritten by the state.
Mm-hmm.
But you have the Science Center. You have the hotels that are down there.
Mm-hmm.
The convention center. All of that has been built out. Now, whether or not they can get conventionaires to come to Hartford is another question.
Mm-hmm. Well, other than the football stadium, that was the only thing that didn't actually get built part of Adrian Land, unless it was something else beyond that. Because the football stadium was supposed to be built in downtown Hartford too.
Well, the downtown Hartford was used and abused in order to get the stadium to be where it is now.
Right. Okay.
In my never to be humble opinion, the stadium was never coming here.
Mm-hmm. Or the Patriots.
Really, yeah,
right. They, the UConn men's football team do play at the Rensselaer Football Stadium.
Well, yeah.
But the
but
Patriots
Pratt & Whitney gave them the land
mm-hmm.
to build the stadium.
Right.
How many games do they play there a year?
College football, you play usually a 12-game season, so probably about 6 home games, probably, give or take. So 6 home games are most likely being played at Rensselaer Field. I mean, you could do other things outside of that throughout the year.
Yeah, but it was built for football.
For football.
Not cookouts.
Right.
Or,
Well, the unfortunate part, as I mentioned maybe a couple times, is what they develop at Foxborough with Gillette Stadium. They have a shopping mall. And I don't know if that was the intention of Robert Kraft, if he would have built that. Maybe
but the population out there will support that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you're close Foxborough. You're close to Boston. I mean, that's Foxborough is not a big.
How far is this mall from the stadium?
The mall is right connected to the stadium.
How many people go into the stadium? How many people does the stadium sit?
Well, it probably holds between 60 to 70,000 people.
So 60 to 70,000 people come into that stadium. I would want a mall next to it.
Right. That's the draw.
Right. If 10% come into the mall, that's 7,000.
That's right. And it's a pretty good, nice, developed structure.
There's probably nice restaurants in there, nice promenades. You can walk around, some high-class jewelry stores, and things along that line, all kinds of football paraphernalia and, nice things for the kids to do, good food, and Santa Claus is in there in the wintertime, and get the whole scheme going.
Yeah. Well, the vision, as you say, you got to have the vision. You have to have the people that are serious,
And as you say, you have to have the money.
Right.
Because without money, none of that happens. But the people with the vision have the money. And their vision starts off small and grows.
And again, it's not, again, at the point I want to keep getting back to, it's not about, because I want to make sure every time I bring up money, you always say that doesn't determine what type of character person you are. And then that's not my whole point of trying to bring that up. I'm just saying you can do things with money that you can't do without money. If it's nice when you can, Bishop Leroy Bailey can hire people to work at the First Cathedral. That's some form of economic development. It may not outright, and he may have like economic development projects outside of that, but I'm just saying he can hire, I don't know how many people, but he has a staff of people that work.
Well, the First Cathedral requires people to be there. It's a huge facility that needs to be managed.
Right.
So you have to have a staff. And part of the, part of the responsibility of leadership is to make sure that the building is maintained. Right. So you have to have a facilities manager. You need security. You need people, office staff, to deal with situations between the members of the congregation. So it's not like he's just hiring people. He's not hiring people. There's to be hiring them. They have work that needs to be done. Yeah. Someone has to do it. It requires full-time work. So therefore you have to have full-time staff. Full-time staff need to be managed. So you need supervisors. So you wind up having a whole infrastructure in terms of personnel, and it is something that is supported by the congregation. They understand that those things are necessary as well. So, that didn't happen overnight. It grew into that.
Right.
This was already decided when they decided to build the building. They knew that they were going to need people to do these things. These things all come before the church elders and the people who make the financial decisions, and they're shared with the congregation. Can you, will you, can we support this? So these things don't just have like, oh, he got money so he could do this. No.
Yeah.
No. And it's a huge responsibility to have to do all this.
And
it all falls on his shoulders because congregation could shrink.
But see, the thing about the vision, what I know about you is you have vision. You have a vision that you could see things duplicated.
Right, Jonathan, but I'm 63 years old.
But even before you were 63 years old.
Well, I did things when I was younger.
Right, but I'm saying on the political level, running for mayor, I'm talking even you. There's no difference there's a difference, but the difference of Mayor Luke Broning having a vision, he has the same mindset.
His vision is different.
It's different, but I'm just saying he has a vision just like you had a vision when you wanted to run a mayor. So you can have a vision, but if you don't get it implemented for whatever reason.
Jonathan, I think you're conflating a couple of things. Vision is a solution to a problem.
Right.
Now, if you're vying to present your solution along with 3 other people, and the solution has to be voted on,
right,
other people may vote for that solution.
Right.
It doesn't mean that your vision is just, like your vision didn't come to pass. Something's being fixed. It's not about my vision. But in order to run, you better have a vision. What's your solution for the issue?
Yeah. Game plan is what somebody always told me you got to have in life.
You're going to get on the field, you better have a game plan, unless you that good that you can wing it.
No, the game plan is the key. And like I say, Bishop Leroy Bailey, he goes back with Dr. Martin Luther King. I believe he, marched with him, and he comes from maybe not the exact generation.
There's a lot of work.
An
awful lot of work to do what he does and what he did. A lot of work. And if things go right, if things go well, you may be able to enjoy some of the fruit of your labor.
Right.
You'll be able to sit back and see others come and take that vision and move it to the next level. All right. That's the sustainability of it. All right. So it was a good vision because it's sustainable and it can grow. Are there going to be pitfalls, good days, bad days? Absolutely. But you pick up and you press on. That is with any day for anybody.
All right.
And you don't have to be Elon Musk. to have a vision.
Right.
You could be regular old Joe and have a vision. And your vision may be to have a house with a picket fence.
Right.
Wife and 2 kids.
Yeah.
And a little spotted dog.
Yes.
And that may be your vision.
Right.
A little cape. With 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And the kids got to share the bedroom till they can get big enough to add an addition to the house. And that's it. You're not trying to conquer the world. You're just trying to live life and have a good time. Go to the beach in the summertime. Go to the park in the winter. Go to the park in the summertime. Mm-hmm. Take the kids sled riding in the winter because you don't have a whole lot of money, but you got enough money to make ends meet.
Right.
To get a car. You don't have 2 cars. Mm-hmm. You got 1 car.
Right.
And you all go someplace together as a family. You have picnics because you can't go on vacation. That's not the end of the world. You got 1 television.
Right. Again, I don't want to sit here. I'm not trying to downplay people can have a fulfilled life because you don't have money. I want to make that perfectly clear. That's not what I'm trying to say, and I hope I was able to clarify that. Mm-hmm. But what I am saying is you need money, and sometime when you're trying to do certain things, it will require sometimes more money than not.
It depends on what you're talking about. So certain things isn't the picket fence house. For you, the certain things is a multiplex complex in the middle of the city.
Well, I said about a mixed-use development project. I was saying, what, and you gave an answer, what keeps that from happening in Hartford that exists in West Hartford. There was a lot of things you mentioned about how they, first of all, they have the disposable income to support it and sustain it. Then you mentioned things about it's mostly a Jewish population base, and they have different beliefs and they have different things.
The culture is different.
The culture is different, right? So I do understand there's more
that
elements.
Leads to the success of downtown or midtown West Hartford.
Yeah, West Hartford Center, which is
right. West Hartford Center's success has a cultural connection,
right,
that is not there for Hartford.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Given the dynamics of Connecticut and how local each community is.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing you can do even in a poor, distressed area, you could still make it clean. You could still, there's
no reason for it not to be clean.
You're right. You could have people put stuff inside the trash can instead of throwing things.
It doesn't matter if people throw stuff outside the trash can. People throw stuff on the ground in Hartford, downtown.
Right. Right. So it's a mindset.
Folk litter in downtown. They just clean it up.
They clean it up. Okay. Where you may not see it in your residential neighborhoods in the city. You might.
Right. They just don't. The resources aren't deployed to go clean it up.
Okay.
So it winds up being on the ground.
Being on the ground. Right. Well, it's a sad cry. Some things is a sad cry. You come home. I'm working at the airport. Coming home late at night, people are sleeping on bus stop benches in some areas of the city. I guess that can spread and go beyond that. And you can't obviously solve everything. But I think awareness of something is still needed, and then what you do with awareness is another step. Everything starts with a step by step. You don't know that there's a problem, you won't know what to do about the problem. So now you know there's a problem.
Well, people to whom much is given, much is required. If you know there's a problem, then it's incumbent upon you to do something about it.
Right.
And to quote the big book, if you see a brother or sister overtaken in a fault, ye with your spiritual will restore such a one. Now, if I don't know there's a problem, then there is no problem for me.
For you, right.
Right. I don't need to be made aware of a problem that doesn't affect me. Why do I want to know about some problem across the street? I don't live over there. People aren't looking for problems that they have enough problems in their life that they don't go looking for problems. And they're not waiting for someone to come and tell them that there's a problem.
No, but if you have the sense of a community and it's not on your street, you still want the community, the other street, to be up. It may not directly be affecting
You may want them to know. I guarantee you, Jonathan, people can be all high and mighty as they want. Folk are not sitting in their house on this street waiting for someone to make them aware of a problem.
Right.
They just aren't.
Right.
Now, you may want to initiate them in the fix, so you have to go and make them aware of the problem and then get buy-in from them, but they're not sitting around. I hope someone comes and lets us know about a problem that they're having somewhere in the city today, because I don't have any problems right now, and I'm looking for one. That people just aren't doing that.
I understand that.
They aren't.
Right.
They aren't. Now, the community will come to the aid of the whole when they find out about a problem, but that doesn't mean they want to be inundated with problem after problem after problem after problem after problem all day long. That's just not where people live. No one. That's not a quality of life. Putting out fires all the time.
Right.
No one wants to live like that.
Well, not just the problem. I mean, there's things that people have. You may have a cookout event. You may have something going on. There's things you have in certain communities that you let people know. Sometimes there's uplifting, positive things. There's a certain get-together that you're having at a local park. Cookouts. Get to meet people.
And people know about those.
Right.
It is my contention that the people who need to know actually do know. And when you have a party and friends and family, you invite them over. You don't invite folks you don't know to your party.
Right.
You invite your friends. And they invite their friends. I think things are not as bad as some people would like them to be. Are there issues? Yes. Can we come up with solutions? Absolutely. If we work together, we can absolutely find ways to get rid of the problems. Absolutely. That's all it takes.
Right.
Working together, and the problem be resolved.
Well, I hear the countdown theme music, so it was a nice, interesting show to have this morning. Booked up from the 17th to the 31st. I don't have a guest for next week.
For next week?
For next Monday, but I am booked up.
I'm sure you'll find one.
I'll find one, yeah. Find who I want is really the challenge. Not so much can I find someone. I could have already had the show booked up, but it's nice.
Jonathan's looking for a specific guest.
I guess. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. But again, I think you're gonna like the 17th to the 31st 3-level schedule that I have booked up for those dates, and I look forward to if your program is coming on with Luis Delgado and Dr. Bowen.
That'll be Wednesday. Yep.
Okay.
All right, then. I'll see you next week, Jonathan. And y'all, I'll see soon on some program, either this Wednesday or tomorrow or tonight at 10. Whenever you join us next time, we'll see you then. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and special thanks to our guests. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.